Hello, Draco Kraken. How are you? Thank goodness. Don't mind me as I crack open a cold one. And by that I mean an energy drink. I love these monster coffees. God, they're too good. I'm gonna die at about, I don't know, 40. Because of how many of these I drink. Well, welcome back to Table Talk, Discussion, and Discourse. I, as always, am your host, Alejo, aka Great95, and it's just me today. It's gonna be just me, entirely today. So, um, yeah. If you didn't know, last week, Aiden said, "Hey, what's up? I'm gonna go and move," and so he's gonna be gone for a month. And Boo tonight is feeling very tired, so he is, taking an early siesta, and it's all good. So I will be joining you in this adventure through the content. Who's the god of ads that are longer than the video you're trying to watch? I don't know, Lux. I don't know, but I think it's Susan. So yeah, as said, well, I haven't said yet, but as going to say right now, today the topic is Pantheon, a Pantheon, creating a Pantheon. Now I won't lie to you, this is a little bit of a selfish pick, because my brain was like, hey man, have you ever thought about, trying to get all the stuff together and maybe trying to figure out what you should have for like gods of, right, in your pantheon for your world? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then my brain also went, well, you don't know all of them. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so my brain went, maybe we should talk about it a little bit. Maybe there's some stuff that we can get a little bit of an insight on, depending on these videos that are that we are going to watch today. And I'm hoping so, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 concepts for gods right now for my world. And regardless of, what they, well, I'll tell you what they are in a second here, but I want to see if there's any staples that you absolutely need. I mean, obviously, you can have them be of whatever, right? You can have them be whatever you want. You can look to our real life and how a lot of religions have multiple or one, or they do the spirits, or they do, it's a whole, there's a whole bunch of ways to do it, and there's commonalities with like their domains of power, of like, this is the healing one, this is the one about death, right? And I wanted to make a few that are a little bit more unique than just taking, oh, it's the god of death and also it's evil, right? Like all that kind of stuff. As someone who's built their own pantheon before, going through your creation myth helps a lot. Also, your players will not interact with it if they can avoid it. That's fair. Yeah. I Yeah, the creation myth for my world, I have a one god's place in it, right? Um and he's the only one that I've really fleshed out a lot because of um the story that I'm writing, and this god is kind of a central figure of what my character in that story wants to appease more so. Um it's I don't I don't as is always, I don't like talking about my stuff because I feel like I'm tooting my own horn and I don't like that. But um you know, I'll lay the grounds for that god in a second here, just to give you some more context. I think you probably need to decide if the gods you're making up are going to be real in your world or not. True. So my thoughts, I'll while I'm going through what I've done so far, I'll also talk about my preconceptions about creating these kinds of things. Um, that is, very, very inexperienced in these preconceptions, because I mean, the creation myth thing makes sense to me, that Draco Kraken brought up, to kind of go through and really find the place, like the places that your pantheon really, has, and why they're continuing to be that pantheon for them to worship, right? Um, but my thoughts are that these gods are all going to be real, whether or not they are known as the same thing in each of the cultures, right? Um, so, and I guess by that I mean these gods will have different names for different cultures, and that's going to be a lot to keep track of for me, and would probably be a lot to keep track of for players. So I'm already like half like, oh man, that's like a lot already. But it's also something that I really think is going to help with the perception of these gods in each of the cultures. Like, one culture might call them a specific name that means something like a bringer of your downfall, right? A harbinger of your failures, right? Something like that. And then in another one, it's venerated. It's someone that that everybody's like, no, this guy actually is like really good and helps you in those times of need and such. Um, I think it would add to the living kind of feel of the world if you have these kinds of cultures that don't necessarily agree on what these gods are. And perhaps there's a truth to one, a truth to the other, or a truth in the middle of what they are and what they represent. But anyway, my base kind of things, and I don't have a document to show you, I'm sorry, but I have a few here that I can read out to you. I've named 5 of the 6. I don't know, and they're subject to change at this point, except for one of them. But we'll start with that one. The one that I have as the most developed so far. And that is called, that one's name is Tenebrum. Now, for those of you who might have an inkling, Tenebrum has its roots in tenebrus, I believe it's Latin word for dark or darkness, that kind of thing. The god of that thing when you're trying to sleep and your brain decides to go over all the cringy things you've done in the past. Oh, yeah. Oh, dude. So, actually, I have a good one for that. Legitimately, I might. But anyway, we'll get there. So, but anyway, originally, in my brain, Tenebrum was going to be, your god of death. But as I kind of worked through some stuff, he became a god of undeath, but not in an evil way. He is both a god of undeath, the downtrodden, of community, kindness, and hope. Because in my world, I have a undead empire faction thing. Their roots are in a tragedy that happened because of another god right? Um, and you, you mean you don't have a step-by-step history of the pilgrimage of each god's followers and how that influenced cultural differences in names? For shame. Just kidding. Right? I could. That's the problem. If I really sat down, I probably can. It would be a lot. It would be too much. But anyway. Uh I have this kind of god of undeath that is more of helping those who are less fortunate, whether that be undeath or not, or sorry, undead or not. Because before he became an undead god, he was one of this same kind of thought, this same kind of values, but because of this tragedy that happened due to a later god that wanted to do that, right? um he died and came back and lost most of his divinity, but he's still trying to do that shit, and there are people who still believe in him in that way, and most who despise him because he is undead, right? Whole thing. Most gods of death and religion were not seen as evil. That's true. Like Anubis isn't necessarily evil. He's a god of judgment and such. And also death, right? And I'm not saying like, oh no, death god evil, right? In most cases, I mean, to be fair, sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's not. For whatever you're kind of playing in, whatever kind of world you're set in. But most people think death, dying, bad, right? Because death is bad sometimes, most of the time, really. But anyway, so I have him, and I'll just quickly go over these other 5, because Tenebrum's the only one that I have anything more to say on, really. So then I have a very original name, Humari or Umari. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll take away the H, but it's still spelled with it. Don't know. God of the Earth and Judgment, and potentially a patron of humanity, potentially. Though I'm now thinking like, maybe I could change it a little bit to be more of a patron of the dwarves or something, because they're more Earth focused, right? And then it could be interesting that I have dwarves act differently. I don't know. I'm not sure. And the only thing that I've thought of is the undead people that I have as their culture and their people mostly. So anyway, going on, I have Mu, god of learning and the sky. I have no idea what the fuck is it gonna be. Honestly, isn't life the cruel one for creating beings that will experience suffering? And we could have a whole philosophical debate, but I mean, it's a way to look at it, right? You know, I understand. I'm right there with you. Don't worry. I like the thought. I really do. I like the thinking that way. But obviously, it would be a whole thing that I don't think is something that we need to. I mean, to be fair, you could have that. I could have that be like people who don't like Humari are like, oh, or not Humari later on. I don't know. I don't have a god of necessarily life. Interesting. Anyway. Then I have one that's unnamed, who is the god of appreciation, who creates chaos to remind people of the value of good things in their life. Okay, so that's I have that as an idea, at least. I don't have a name for them, but that's how I kind of want them to be. They're the one who gives you a bad day so that you can appreciate the good days, right? And that's the whole thing. Probably not going to be looked at as too great most of the time, though potentially could be. I don't know. It really depends. I gotta flesh him out more, but it seems like a really interesting concept to me. I don't know. Yog-Sothoth is the god of life. There you go. Yeah. And then I have a god of desolation in the void. I might change the second one, but this is going to be my actual like bad thing. Like, this is the bad one. Vinarot, so far as the name, might be subject to change as well. don't know about that one. I was going through different languages trying to figure out a name with different words and such, but we'll see. And then lastly, the one that I thought of not too long ago, which was Saturico, the god of harvest and the health. Very easy to tie those two together, where you have good harvest and good health, right? Kind of like a homely kind of oriented god, who helped Tenebrum in a way with the whole kind of undead curse thing that happened. And Vinnerat was the one who created the undead virus, quote unquote, right? The undead plague that has happened that killed Tenebrum. So yeah, that's where I'm at so far. I have these kinds of building blocks there. And I'm hoping to fill it a little bit more with things that are more necessary, I guess. I could probably look at the Pantheons of like D&D, or like the Pantheons of the Norse mythology and all that kind of stuff, like is in the player's handbook and such, and really kind of go through what they are and what they represent, and go through like Olympus and all of those things, like, and figure out what they all are, right? Try to do my spin on them. But also, that's what's going on here now, hopefully. We'll see. So why don't we move on to the videos? We'll see how long this goes, since it is just me. So please yell out if you have something to say, and I will read it, and we will talk. But we will see how this goes. I'll eat any god lore up, really. Hell yeah, dude. I really like the idea of creating this Pantheon kind of stuff, right? Careful modeling after Greek gods. Those family trees are a nightmare. True. Yeah, no, don't worry about that. I just meant what they stood for. That's about it. No. None of that stuff. I don't want to be too complicated in that way. Fuck that. Okay, so let's move on. So, this first video is create a Pantheon by D&D Homebrew, a channel that we covered, I think, once before, only once. But we liked his stuff, and I'm interested to see what he has to say about this, because it seems like he has some good ideas. So, here we go.
In this episode, I'm going to discuss whether it's necessary for you to create your own original Pantheon for your homebrewed campaign. I'm going to discuss kind of the pros and cons of whether this is a good idea. Then I'm going to give my tips on building a Pantheon and an origin story for your universe, because this can seem daunting, because not only are you creating a whole world with a homebrewed campaign, but now you're having to explain how that world came to be.
True.
But there are ways to do this to make it a little simpler, and what it does is it creates for your players the sense that they are in a fully realized universe in your homebrewed campaign. So, let us speak of the gods.
Nice.
Hello again, I'm KR King. This is my YouTube channel dedicated to homebrewing your own campaign. When I outlined my sample campaign of Melanor, I mentioned that I was going to be using the Greyhawk Pantheon for my clerics, for my god system. And in that discussion, I said you could use any of the pantheons that are given in the books, or you could homebrew your own pantheon. And then I had a subscriber who said, in a comment, he said, look, I want to get started on my homebrewed campaign, but I'm having a problem building a pantheon. To which the first reaction I have is, dude, don't worry, start your campaign. Just use one of the pantheons. That's what I did. But there is a sentiment out there, well, but if I'm going to really create a full universe, a world that's truly my own, shouldn't I create my own gods? Shouldn't I create a system that's totally unique, that ties into the way the game works, but is my own creation? You can do that. There are reasons that I would say to perhaps not worry about it, which I'm going to give here, but certainly you can do that.
Yeah, okay. So far, obviously the reasons is fucking complicated, and you've already got stuff that you can go for, right? Like, they already have their Pantheon that you can use from the Forgotten Realms, or from, as you said, Greyhawk, or Dragonlance, or, you know, all of those kinds of things. And it's way easy to plug and play But I also understand that feeling because I have that feeling, and that's why I'm doing it. Of I want these things to follow kind of my the world is there. Plugging in the Faerun gods is like, okay, yeah, I can make it work. I can make these people followers of this thing and all that. But I kind of want to make the followers and stuff, they can have their own orders or their own kind of retinues and all that kind of stuff that have been made specifically to be under this god. And I want it to mean more to me, I guess, and mean more to the world that I'm creating and not be from something else. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes in total sense, but I could do it easily to go, oh, Paylor? Fucking, I have the Sun Bros, right? Mind the meme. Sun Bros, who, those are the guys, they go out there and they do shit for Paylor. Like, that's the thing, right? And if I had my own God of the Sun or whatever, one who embodies that kind of aspect, I could also do the same thing. But if I didn't want to work for it, I would go, Paylor! Right? There he is. But yeah. Also, I think you can get some inspiration for good ideas, but there aren't really any hard rules you absolutely have to follow IMO. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's not. I just want to... I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, I guess, that I would find vital, right? Because I think a god of life and a god of death are usually pretty good to have in a pantheon, just because those are very much things that you are probably going to come up or need to come up with. Sorry, not need to come up with. You will probably have invoked in some way, right? Someone is going to talk about the god that birthed everybody, right? Or at least their people or something, right? That said, I just remember that you will probably need to do something about Cleric Domains, an issue I crashed right into. Yeah, that's also true, but I think domains are a little bit easier once you figured out what the god is about, because with Tenebrum, I think it would be... Uh-oh. I would have to look at the domains again, but I think once I actually... I can probably theme it with both being undead kind of stuff, quote-unquote, necromancy, right? As well as some things that are more helpful, things that are more supportive in spells and such. So I'd have to look at the domains again. That's a good actual point, though. I should get more familiar with what are domains, because at least with all the official ones, because I think making my own domains is fine and all, but I think that's a step too far, at least for me right now. I might in the future think about it, but just assigning domains doesn't feel like I'm plug and playing a whole god and what they're about and all that shit, right? It's more just, oh, this is what the spells that you have access to, right? Using your own also avoids previous knowledge your players may have and avoids the a follower of X wouldn't do that. Yeah, there's also that. I don't expect that to be the case most of the time with most people that I know, to be fair, because I don't think most of us pay attention to any of the followers of such and such, right? We just pay attention to what the god's about and go, well, why would they do that then? And in many cases, you can make arguments of like, oh, the god of justice, right? Well, this cult of them is like absolute justice. Like, they will kill you for any infraction on it. They will punisher the fuck out of you for throwing your litter on the ground, right? Because that's how they interpret what the god is about, right? And you can easily go with interpretations. And I think just going, hey, it also goes with like how the gods still are there and influencing. Do they have a firm kind of influence, or are they more distant, right? Which some of them could be, some of them couldn't be. There's a lot of things that you got to kind of take account in that kind of way. And if you're plug and playing a god, well, you then have to figure that out too. And like when you custom make one, I think you can shape the personality to more be that way, however you want it to be. And I think it's easier, at least in my mind. I don't know. It's probably a lot more work, but I mean, it is definitely a lot more work. But I don't know. Feels more satisfying to me personally. But that is, again, a personal thing.
And certainly I did this in the past. I had several campaigns where I had fully realized Pantheons. For example, when we first started playing in the 70s, the box set, edition 0 or whatever, we created a Pantheon because, frankly, the clerics kind of sucked. They weren't very good in terms of the other players. So what we did, we created a whole host of gods. We had warrior gods where the clerics could use weapons. We had neutral gods where we had a fire priest that could throw fireballs and things. An air priest had, control weather and all these different. We had a death priest. We in those days we ran evil characters. We realized along the way that was not a good idea. But we had these characters, and what happened?
Interesting. I would love for him to elaborate on that. I guess in that system, it was less viable to run an evil campaign. I don't actually know. I wouldn't. This is the thing. This is hindsight, because at this point right now, I would look at 1E and play it however the fuck I wanted, right? 1E, quote unquote, 0E, whatever you want to call it. But maybe back then it felt more stringent. I don't know. One thing you might want to steal from Pathfinder 2E is the anathemas. Oh, that rings a bell. Hold on. You've made me need to now know what that is, so that I can say more about it, because that rings a big bell. Anathemas. If only Brogan was here. PF2E. What the fuck was this? Anathema. Hold on. Wait, what? Pursue mundane paths over magical ones? What does that mean? Oh, no, these are, yeah, those are like what they're about or something? Am I a crazy man? Let me open up my copy of the Pathfinder 2E core rulebook. And then I will be less of a big dumb. It's been a hot minute since we talked about PF2E. Here we are. So looking at not ancestries. We're looking at, don't know. Things you're not supposed to do as a follower of that god. That's probably it. Yeah, you're probably right. It's been a hot fucking minute. So, hot and heavy minute. Let me I guess let me go into the index. Thank you. There we go. Anathemas are actions that directly go against a god's will and make you lose favor with that god. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yes, I do remember this now that you have said it entirely. Yes. Those are very useful. Though I would say, I think at least for my interpretation of how gods work, you can do that, and you can have things that make them like less like you, right? But they'll still like give you power and stuff, and if you're doing things for the sake of their core belief, quote unquote, their core like tenets, I guess it really depends on who you are and what you do, and if you've actually pledged yourself to them and their cause and all that kind of stuff, right? I'd have to think about it a lot more. But anathemas are good for... It wouldn't help for the ones that are like, oh no, we find that this god is this, and they represent something different than what they actually represent, right? Because in that case, then doing the things that are good, quote unquote, would like be, hey man, you're doing the thing, or I guess the thing that they're trying to go against would be the things that they're actually for, or something, right? I think it can be good for those who know what the true intentions of their god is, right? If they're an actual cleric who actually has communion with the god, if the god is more active and such. And it's good to get them to understand what the fuck they need to do, but I also think that the layman is going to go, fuck it, right? There was something before that I didn't read. I've ended up with just a few gods with a crapload of domains each, which I guess was okay, but it felt a little bit heavy-handed. That's fair, yeah. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's totally fair to have just, like, 3 gods and they have, like, all of the domains, right? Like, you know, divided up into 3. I suppose there's a tolerance level. Yeah, sure. Even Pathfinder's super relaxed on how many times till they go no power for you, DM choice and all. Oh no, of course. That's the thing. I guess what I'm saying is the anathemas are good to have as a guideline for how you want your gods to react to what's going on around them. I'm just saying, like, if I wanted to do it in a mechanical kind of sense, I don't think I would. Right? I think it would just be until you've done something that's completely against, like, completely and utterly, like, you're quite literally going 100% against what your god is about, and you have no intention of following what they want anymore, you know, then you'll lose your shit. Like, you become, in, like, 5e, there's the Oathbreaker for the Paladins and all that kind of stuff, losing your power and all that with a cleric. You just become a dude. Yeah, I don't know. But I think it is a good idea to help with creating the god. So, thank you for the suggestion.
We're not, we didn't play test these very well. We're not really game designers at this time. We were just kids, right? And what happened was the clerics became the favorite characters. I had a friend of mine always played a fire priest, loved it. He could use weapons as a neutral cleric and throw spells. They got out of balance. And what happened for me was, as the editions went along, they integrated the clerics better into the system. Things kind of balanced out. Again, wizards at the end are very powerful, but still, the clerics were not as worthless of characters within the system. So for me, the homebrewing of the Pantheon kind of fell away. Now, the other thing about a Pantheon in D&D versus a historical Pantheon is they serve different purposes. In real life, a Pantheon is created or evolves, or however it comes to be, out of a sense of why is the world the way it is?
Yeah.
Where did the world come from, and why do things happen as they happen?
True.
Oftentimes, why do bad things happen to good people? This kind of thing. And the Pantheon and gods serve as a purpose for this. Also, it's tied into the social fabric of a civilization, where the priests help perform certain functions in terms of birth and death and marriage and all this other stuff.
Which is why I think having your gods that you make have, or at least for me, having them have different views, or be viewed differently, from different people is what kind of ties into the whole, like, trying to make sense of the world kind of thing, right? Because they all exist, they're all there. Everybody knows about them, and they give power and such, but for some, they can see the coming of somebody of Tenebrum to be, the god of undeath is here to convert us all into his thralls, right? Instead of it being, there's a guy here who wants to help the local community center with all the kids playing basketball and giving them a new hoop, right? Because the old one fell down or something, right? Like, completely different things for different people. Of course, I've also had Multiverse that was created by a fairy lord and ruled over by 3 opposing fairy courts. Nice. That's cool.
So it has a true social purpose and a philosophical purpose in terms of the meaning of the world. In Dungeons & Dragons, the Pantheon doesn't necessarily serve this way. It's for a game. It's for the mechanics of a game, to run a clerical system, to, yes, flesh out and make a world seem real, but it doesn't have that same function. And you see this in the lack of an origin story in the rules of D&D.
Is that true? In the DMG? Where's my DMG? I don't have my DMG. Where's my DMG? Let me look at my totally official copy of the DMG that I have right here on my computer. Because I do own a DMG. It's just, I think it's downstairs. In that, they probably, no, that's right. In the DMG, they only talk about the planes, right? They don't talk about the, yeah, no, you know what probably talked about? Where is it? Where in my book? Every chance I get, I'll bring out the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Now, let me see. The Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Do you have a brief history and page 15? Is that? No, this is talking about the actual flourishing of the Sword Coast. No, okay, it doesn't. Damn. Oh, I was really hoping. Oh wait, no. Sorry, the Days of Thunder. Great cities through the wilderness. Okay, it's not about creation of stuff. It's more about the civilization coming up. Anyway, sorry. 3.5 definitely did. Yeah, but in 5e I don't think they have a creation story. I don't think they've gone into it since back in 3.5. Maybe 4 had it. I didn't read it in the player's handbook because that's the only thing I read, remember. And I haven't read anything else. Excuse me, goodness. I remember something about the kobolds being forced to live underground because Garl Glittergold, the gnome god, destroyed their home and passed it off as a joke. That sounds like him. Yeah, I think it was probably back in older editions that they talked more about it, but nowadays, I think he's right. Which is unfortunate, because it would really help with, like, conceptualizing how this stuff came to be. Although, with 5e, again, we've talked about it before, kitchen sink fantasy, where everything is in there, and the only real canon stuff would be from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide for Faerun, or Eberron, Rise of Eberron, or, yeah, Rise of Eberron, I think it's called. Or, I guess Strixhaven, you know, all of those things that are actually in established settings, because 5e is more about do whatever the fuck you want, which is good, I think, but I also think having the old setting explained and such is still a good idea to have for those who still want it, which is why Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide exists, but also doesn't exist anymore because you can't find it anymore, probably. I don't know. They threw it under the rug, dude. My poor book here that I spent fucking $50 on back in the day. Man, I'll still be pissed about it, because I bought this book. I'll refer to it as much as I can. I gotta get its worth out somehow.
And I might be wrong here, but as far as I know, in terms of all the various editions and supplements and whatnot, there hasn't really been an explanation of how the world came to be. Probably. The gods are here. There are old, forgotten gods. There are gods in the past. There are remains of God on the astral plane. But again, nothing is like this.
There are? That's news to me. But he might be right. I don't know. That'd be cool.
This is what there was, and then the gods came forth and created the world. Now, you know, there's arguments back and forth. And again, somebody out there might say, well, in this supplement, it shows the origin of the D&D universe. Okay. But I think the reason that, you know, there was a sense of the Satanic Panic and all that stuff way back when, and maybe, you know, TSR, all these people didn't want to go into that. They didn't want to go into the origin story of the world to fuel the fire for people that were opposed to D&D. I don't know. But the
What are we talking now? Are we talking about D&D in general? Because maybe in first edition they didn't have it or something. I don't know. I think second had history, and then 3.5 did. Like, they didn't shy away from it again for a long time. After the Satanic Panic stuff, I think they just went, no, fuck it, it's fine. Though I could be wrong. I absolutely could be wrong. I have no idea. But in 5e stuff, I think it's more just there's so much there that they didn't want to overload these books that are supposed to be simple and simplistic for people to just plug and play whatever the fuck they wanted, right? For the core books at least, right? Until they started releasing the adventures and stuff, that's when they actually started giving a shit about telling like actual lore. But and that makes sense to me, because it would be like as much as I like the amount of information that's in 3.5 and such, it's ultimately for the stuff that's like history and such of these kinds of worlds, it's unnecessary if you don't use them, right? And the 3.5 epic level handbook, I actually have a copy of that. There's a type of monster that's basically an undead fetus of a god that died before it came to life. Yeah, and they reused that in it's that dinosaur island one that has a Sassorak? Something like that. Where is it Tomb of... It's not Tomb of Horrors, is it? No. Whatever. It's one of those, it's that official one that's for 5e now. Because that's, like, in that book, I think. I'm not sure. I think that's the case. Anyway.
Point is that if you're going to create a pantheon, do you just want to create that pantheon in terms of the gods that fit into the D&D system, or are you trying to create an origin story for your world?
Can be both.
So I think some of the impulse that people have in terms of creating a pantheon is the fantasy books they've read, you know, like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, where he had worked out this elaborate cosmology, pantheon and all this stuff way before he ever wrote the books. So we feel like, well, I should be doing that as well. Now, what I would argue is that he wrote this all out in the Silmarillion, right? But how many people have enjoyed reading the Lord of the Rings books, which has all this background stuff kind of woven in, or the actual book, the Silmarillion, which contains all these legends? I would say most people enjoy reading Lord of the Rings, and in fact, I would say that most people have never gotten through the Silmarillion. So the thing to remember is what's interesting is the action of the world. If your character, as I said in the last episode, is Frodo Baggins, if your player characters are the central protagonists in the world, we're not really interested in things that happened, 5,000 years before.
No, absolutely not. You're right. And what I would argue then is the use of creating this backstory and such can be there for them if they look into it. But it's more there for you as the DM to get an idea of how to make your world and make your pantheon and all that kind of stuff and make it all fit, right? Your history is important for your foundation of what your world is today. You don't have to be super detailed about it or anything, but yeah, it can be boring, absolutely, but it helps again with the foundation. So, suppose you do have to get around to using your world at some point. Yeah, that's true. That's also true. This is the thing. If you want to put a lot of work into the setup for your world, I don't see an issue there. Because it's up to you when you want to run things, right? Unless people are like, hey, can you run something real quick, like next week, right? Because we like how you run things. Well, then you don't have time to do all this stuff unless you can work in a week to get everything ready. But what I'm saying is, if you want to make this stuff, you can take as much fucking time as you want. You can put as much care and craft into it as you want. Excuse me, goodness, I'm dying. You can put all this stuff into it, and it really depends on you and when you think it's ready. Obviously, we don't want to be we don't want to have it take so long that you never have a chance to use it, obviously. So you've got to, figure out when something is good enough for you. But that's a whole other conversation, I guess. I didn't actually listen to Silmarillion as an audiobook, though I zoned out a lot more than I would like to have. Oh yeah, that's fair. I think it's a popular and well accepted thing at this point that the Silmarillion is boring as hell. And that's fine. Maybe I'll listen to it at some point, but right now I have no interest to, because the world of the Lord of the Rings is good enough as is with just the books that I have read. The Hobbit through the Return of the King, and then the movies, the Lord of the Rings movies. I think that's enough for me. I don't need more than that. Give me a second, everybody. Unfortunately, since I am the only one here and I need to take a moment, I'm gonna have to leave you in silence for a few seconds. So I apologize, but I will be right back. Okay. Apologies. I am back. Probably a good time to head off in the direction of work. Well, I've just returned, so better come back. No, it's fair enough. Have a good day. Cool. So, or maybe it's not.
And when you think of the game mechanics, we call upon the gods in terms of, well, first of all, they give you the spells as a cleric. You also call upon them for information or inspiration. When you're desperate, you call upon the gods and they may help you, especially, you're role-playing here and showing how you're helping the gods. But you're not interacting with them at a level of beyond very, controlled environment, and you're not really worried about the relationships between them. You're not influencing those relationships. Now, having said those kind of cons, what are the pros? Well, first of all, it does create a sense that your world is truly unique.
I mean, okay, so you're not necessarily doing that, but they could be doing it with each other, right? Like, missions from gods could go against other gods, or empower them, or depower some, I suppose that might not be what he's talking about, but regardless.
Unique, truly complete. The players are in there, and it can contribute to a meta story. If you have a story of your campaign, you're envisioning your players going from 1st to 20th and working out some great cosmic struggle, the gods may be involved. And if the gods are involved, is there some story tracing back to the origins of the universe or the origins of your pantheon that the player characters can be involved in, even if, somewhat peripherally? and they can take part in that and finish that off. So there is that meta aspect that can be important. The other thing is it can be really fun to create your own deities. I like it when the player characters find some forgotten deity or something that no one knows about, and whether or not they bring it forth in terms of worshiping it, or they bring about a new group of adherents or acolytes or something. This can be really interesting. So if you do want to create your pantheon for your world, the other element is don't be overwhelmed. You don't have to spend 2 years in your basement working out, all the gods and their relationships and how this started and that, and work it all the way down thousands of years.
Haha, joke's on you, man. I've been working on this world on and off for like 5 years now, and this is when I just got to the god part, so I'm already it's more due to my lack of work ethic, I guess, than anything. You're not playing Exalted? Yeah, but you could, I guess. No god offers powers for free. Exactly.
You can actually do this fairly simply because, as I mentioned, the Pantheon in D&D is worked out for the rules of the game, for the mechanics of the game. So when you're thinking of your Pantheon, the first thing you want to think about is how does it work into the rule system you're using. So in D&D 5e, you want it to work into the domains. So a knowledge god, what sort of knowledge is this? And then you have the alignments. You have a lawful good knowledge god, a neutral knowledge god, and an evil knowledge god.
Okay, so yeah, that's the thing that I'm going to struggle with. Probably. Alignments. You know how we feel about alignments here on the panel. Alignments are a guideline, but for gods, they have to be kind of absolute. Kind of. In a way, they have to embody those kinds of things. Though I guess you could have more, you could still have it be kind of a guideline where it's like majority of the time they're chaotic good, but sometimes they go for the law if it suits them, right? It's more for, oh god, it would be more for using these kinds of things if it matters to your characters, like what their alignments are. And it would work overall more so if you have them with alignments that are hard and set, I think, because then they can go, hey, this is my alignment, you are my alignment, we're probably gonna hang out pretty well together, right? Because I don't know. I can see, now, so more so, I guess, the way that I can wrap this in my head is that I can see a character of any alignment go, hey man, I'm gonna go with this guy, even if they're completely different from their alignment, right? Because they believe in their tenements, right? I was talking to him because he can read my chat messages across time, you see. Ah, yes, of course. I don't really know how you would apply D&D's alignment to Greek gods unless they're all just evil. Yeah, well, I put most gods in everything as neutral that I think of it, because it's like they care, but only sometimes when it concerns them. Alignment could be based on perception rather than nature. Oh, see, now that would be cool. That would be cool. This is the thing, because when you're making a god, you are making a character, right? At least in my mind, I'm making a character, and yes, the gods are above the people, right? The folk of your world. They're technically above, but are they above in power only? Are they not wanting or needing of other things, right? They might have their own vices, right? Like, I don't think it's a stretch to say that every single religion has the gods that are, except for one of them that I can think of, has the gods that are not perfect. They're imperfect, in fact, where they have what they need and what they want, and they fall to temptations or desires or any of that kind of stuff, but not necessarily because they're bad or anything. It's just that's part of their character, quote unquote, right? So they're perceived, and I think it can really, if you do it based on perception, you could even have it, especially for what I'm thinking of, you could have it so that people follow them because they think that these gods are specifically, bad because that's how they are, or, they're doing things in their name. Like, okay, let me give you an example. I suppose they tend to just not admit to being imperfect. Yes, most of the time. Let me give you an example from my personal stuff that I'm doing, just to give you my frame of reference for my brain. The undead empire thing that I have going on, not really an empire, kingdom, maybe empire, the faction itself, they had their starting kind of beginning being a tragedy that made them horrible wretches, that were either they would either go mad because of the undeath that destroyed their minds because they were unable to comprehend the fact that they were still alive but they could not pass on, or that they became monsters that were unaccepted to society / could not go into the light of the day like they could before, even though they felt alive, all that kind of stuff. And then some that accepted that as well but kind of had to survive afterwards and became colder, more monstrous, all that kind of stuff. And some who still stuck to the ideals of quote unquote humanity, the not necessarily human side, but just the tenements of being a good person, quote unquote, a normal human, quote unquote, being. Since I only have the reference of being a human, like being just a person, right? And kind of dealing with their new affliction however they could. And ultimately, the ones who were colder were more powerful because of that. They embraced what they were and drew power from it. Eventually rose to power and kind of created the society that they now have as a flourishing, quote unquote, flourishing society. That some eat the raw flesh of living sentient beings, sapient beings, excuse me. Some drink the blood of those. Some have to just have them as kind of cattle or mobile food sources, all that kind of stuff. And they all still follow Tenebrum, even though Tenebrum is the god of kindness, community, the downtrodden, because that's how he was before, and he would help them when he was still walking the world. And well, he still helps them regardless, but he's still walking the world technically. He's a lot less powerful now, but he would help them get on their way and find their place before. But they still follow him because he is now like them. He was the one to usher them into being able to live that way, being able to create the society and all this stuff. And though I would call him a lawful good deity because that's in his nature, the perception that other people have because of the way that the undead kingdom, empire, whatever, has treated other sapient people, made them into literal food, kind of is more likely to be against them and all that kind of stuff because of the fact that they can't, be in the sunlight and all that kind of such. They have to hunt them, and they desire to be seen as a similar race of people when they are persecuted for being undead, and that's unholy, quote unquote, or just against what they think for the other kind of races most of the time. They're thought of as evil, and so Tenebrum is thought of as evil most of the time, because that's just how other people look at him. Doesn't help that the war happened too. Big war happened. Don't worry about that. everyone went to war. It was pretty cool. And then big things happened. But anyway, so that's how I see the perception of him changing what his alignment is to other people, because you could find people in other places in the same world that look to this guy and go, that guy is evil. I want to follow him because I want to become a big bad guy, an evil man, and become undead at some point, and they revel in that, right? And they become undead for whatever means, never knowing the true nature of Tenebrum, never wanting to really research it or needing to really figure out what's going on, and especially since the other factions, quote unquote, don't really care to keep track anymore, because of years of, you know, their personal perceptions and prejudices because of how the undead have been for hundreds of years at this point. Anyway, that's where my brain is, and that's how I think I'll go about it. Yeah. It makes it a lot more confusing for players and me. Woo! I like my fairy court thing because being capricious and dangerous to some degree, and also not quite familiar to human psychology, was pretty much inherent. Yeah, it's fair. I have to head to work for now. That's fine. Don't worry, Lux. Go on. Get out of here. Go get the money. Go make that bread, or whatever it is that people say. Thanks for hanging out. I'm sure I'll still see you around. Anyway, I don't know. I kind of just rambled for a bit. I hope that helped with how my brain works, and maybe gives you an idea of what's going on. As you can tell, probably that's the only faction that I've really thought about a lot. Because I like undead, and I like having undead characters that are more than just undead, you know? Plus the thing that I'm writing has a undead character as the main character, who is kind of, you know, following Tenebrum because of things and all that stuff, and knows the real Tenebrum and does the things because of the real Tenebrum and not because of the one that everyone knew, and all that stuff. Would players even know Tenebrum's lawful nature? If they were to find out what, like, it's not even law, like, in the traditional sense. It is more a personal code, right? In essence, he's just good. Would they be taught the common perception? See, that's the thing. It depends on who they are and where they come from. That's the problem that I'm gonna have, right? Hey, who are you? Oh, you're gonna be a human from over here? Well, guess what? You fucking hate undead. The undead that you know, unless you want to be one of those weirdos who might have an open mind, you were probably raised to hate the undead, Tenebrum, and everything they stand for. You're probably going to have a hard time believing anything good comes from Tenebrum ever. But if they were to find out, like, if they were to talk to characters that are like my one that I'm writing about, if they were to talk to or research into the forgotten / restricted lore of their society, they might find out that Tenebrum before wasn't undead. He was just a guy who was a god who helped them, right? He was a god to literally all people, who would help all of the people in trouble, gave them, he would shape places on the earth when they were first becoming like an actual people to make cities. Like, he would shape places that they could use to then create cities from, right? The fields of places would have little to no water / trees / anything really around to help them create a home or something, or there wasn't enough animals around or something. He would literally make it ideal so that people could at least live, not maybe thrive without work and thinking about it more, but he would make it so people could live places. And then later on, he became undead. And then, then people started to shun him because he also lost a lot of his power, so he couldn't do that anymore. So then it was like, That's the thing. I have this whole idea of how he became, how he was and then became what he is. And it is something that I like a lot. It's in my head, right? And no one will know about it unless I talk about it on or they listen to this, or they were to find out from someone in my world or some action in my world. But it's definitely there, and I love that it's there in my brain, right? They'll never know. They'll never know Tenebrum. Never like I do. Anyway.
Right? And those domains overlap. You have multiple domains. You just look at the books, look at the various pantheons that they show you, and then you create your own. You can get on the internet, like there's a whole series of Baltic gods, right? There's a whole series of Mesoamerican gods. There's, gods from the Baltic and the Balkans, right? There's all sorts of different gods. You can look them up and take them and use them and think about them in terms of their relationship to the world. And you don't worry about, in this example, the origin of the universe or anything. You're just trying to create your own gods that are unique to you. And then the nice thing about not worrying about the origin story is you just have gods that are for the orcs or the evil creatures or the mind flayers or whatever, and you don't have to explain how they all came to be.
Sure.
You just say, these are the gods I have, these are the gods, here's how they line up with the domains, here's how they line up with the various races, okay, let's play. If you want to work out your origin story, then it's a little different. Then you have the relationships with the gods, then you have how the universe came to be. It's a little more complicated. The method that I always use, this is just mine, you can use whatever, is I would always have some primordial one solid state chaos, right? Or, nothingness, darkness. Or you are, the mentality of the one creator. Whatever it is, this sort of oneness, and out of this comes many. You're just trying to create, there was this sort of let there be light moment with out of the primordial chaos, the god or the gods emerged, right? And then from there it works its way down.
Sounds like what you really want to write is the Reader's X Tenebrum romance novel. First off, you put an I in there, it's Tenebrum. There's no I. Tenebrium. Excuse you. But no. This is the I just like having something that I don't know. I'm just passionate, that's all. Tenebrum's my favorite because I like the characters that are outcasts, and so having that kind of be a major theme for him is really good. For I don't know, I made him for myself. Fuck off, I don't know. I don't fucking know. I wanted to say though, for this point, I think honestly I like the idea more so about the primordial oneness being something that's implied but not necessarily stated, because I don't the idea of everything coming from nothing is fine. It's a thing that is a part of every story, even in life itself, but I think it's annoying to me to need to think, why the fuck did the gods exist? They did at some point, right? And then they made this place. Cool. What made them? It doesn't matter. Does not matter to me. I don't think anybody. I mean, if somebody asks the question, I will go, okay, let's figure it out. You will try to find out. I will try to give you answers, but for you and for me, I'm probably not going to give you a lot. I'm probably going to say, no one knows. It's never been recorded as a thing, because all they know is that the gods are real, and somebody might have asked one of them at one point, what the fuck, where did you come from? And they go, we just did. Or, I don't know. I'm just here now, right? Because potentially they could also still be looking for that. They could still be trying to figure that out themselves. Who knows? But the curiosity, maybe that's why the God of Knowledge is the God of Knowledge, because he's obsessed with finding the shit out. You know, oh, I'm writing that down. I like that. Don't mind me. Where's my god of learning? There you are. Mu, the god of the sky. And learning. Trying to figure out where he and the rest of the gods came from. Like that. Cool. What made the gods? They made each other. How the fuck? Exactly. And hell, it might just be like, at some point in the future, you might, like, somebody might find out and go, oh, it was just a chance? And crush everything that they know. I don't know. Let's see.
What I would say is there's two examples that I've used in the past to create gods. The first is the sort of familial family relationship of the gods that you see in like the Greek pantheon or the Norse pantheon. And it builds out from, you know, a pair of parents and whatever, and then goes down through their kids. And they all have these relationships based on family relations or whatever. Then you also have the Fall from Grace Pantheon. And this is sort of where you have this perfect universe, everything is wonderful, and then somebody decides they get envious or jealous or they want power, and they fall from grace. And then you have this...
Yes, Tolkien was a Christian, so he based it technically off of what he knew, so that's why it's so similar. Not an allegory, though. Don't worry about that. But he wrote what he knew, and it's fair. It's a way to do it. But I was going to say, with the family structure thing, I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it, in the sense of my making it. It's fine for, like, the Norse and all that kind of stuff. I like how it is, right? But with my ideas, I don't want them to be related, quote unquote, or anything like that, because that just, oh god, I don't want to deal with that. Why would they, you know? I mean, sure, it could be a natural need or anything from beings. That's fine. I don't want to deal with that. I'm sorry. I just don't. I really don't. This just complicates everything. They'll have a bad breakup and then the whole world will blow up, you know? I don't, it's just... Yeah, I can have them be above things to a certain extent. They don't need that.
Dualistic sort of pantheon in which you have good versus evil, light versus dark. So in the Greek pantheon, you have this chaos out of which comes Uranus, the sky, Gaia, the earth. They're the first parents of the gods. And they have these children, the Titans, and the son Kronos rises up. He castrates Uranus, throws them over. And they in turn are thrown over by their children, led by Zeus. And they're like people. They get mad at each other. They get jealous. You don't mess with Zeus. Just ask Sisyphus that, right? Rolling his rock. Zeus runs the show. But you also have... in the Greek system, fate with a capital F, the more, that Zeus cannot control. The fates are mysterious, inscrutable. They do things that no one can understand, and even Zeus can't, deny their powers. The ethos here is events are occurring out of this the God's anger or jealousy or love or whatever. It isn't necessarily your fault.
With that kind of thinking, then I can, that's how you can have it so the gods don't even know some things. They're just there. That's why I like the idea of having a god that's, like, trying to figure everything out. Who's like, I just need to know. I just need to know, literally, it's my thing. I gotta do it. Yeah, I don't know. Because, like... Having something that's actually represented by a being makes it kind of definite, right? If the Fates were to die, then everything would fucking be destroyed. So then, let's just have it be a constant that some things are affected by the universe itself and not just the gods. Like, yes, the gods can shape the universe, but there are also rules there, you know? They might be all-powerful, but they're not all-powerful, you know? I don't know. That's why I could even make it so that things can ascend to become a god. Might be a minor deity until it grows power, but it could even ascend to become the god of figs specifically, right? Like, and then it's like, I love these figs. Thank you, god of figs. And then the god of figs gets a little more powerful, and he's like, yay. And then at some point he becomes the god of the harvest instead, because he takes over. Because he's not just able to do figs, he's able to do everything. I don't know. If I remember right, my Pantheon had the god of light and night came into being, and then they made all the others. And then the god of light killed the god of medicine for making a poison that kills gods. Nice. You idiot, why did you make a thing that'll kill us, you fool? And then he kills him. Very cool. Drink your own medicine, nobody will know. Why do you do that? If that's the case, then why don't you just kill him? I mean, I guess maybe he's not as strong as the god of light. I don't know. So he's trying to go like, haha. I don't know. Questions?
It's the gods working out their issues like people do in the world, like the kings and queens and like the big shots in the world do. You know, us little people on the ground, we are just at their whim, but it's not our fault because we're just simple folk. Now, if you have the Fall from Grace Pantheon, you have this sort of perfect world, perfect plane of existence, these angels or whatever, that everyone's going along great, and then one of them becomes corrupt. They become envious, they want all the power themselves, and they fall from grace.
That's fair, but I then go, why and how? You know? Like, that doesn't... just has so many questions.
We see this in the Tolkien Pantheon. The Valar are all there making their music, and Melkor decides my music is better, I want to play all the songs, and he falls away and starts this battle. In this world, your actions are either opposed, right? This is dualism. There's one side or the other, and you as a human being have to choose your side. We see this with the Star Wars kind of thing, the Force, and, you know, evil versus good. And it's very much you are...
you can't use that anymore. I'm sorry, friend. The Force doesn't make any sense anymore. It's not a force anymore. It's just a thing that's just there. It used to be just a force, but now it's like a being itself with the canon that literally makes bad things because there's too much good, or good things because there's too much bad. Like, it just... No. I do love the idea that mortals can achieve apotheosis. Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite kind of concepts, because apotheosis is just a great word, first off, and it's like a whole thing where you could have a whole story happen. Like, that could be a campaign where you could be trying to either stop an apotheosis or witness an apotheosis, bring it about, or something, right? It could be a personal goal of a character to have an apotheosis happen. Like, oh man, there's so much potential there, you know? It makes it so it also just makes them make more sense to me, because it's just like, I don't know, man. It's all fickle and more personal that way, in a way. I don't know.
Are responsible for your actions, and you pay for those. You align yourself with the right side. Now, and it's interesting, because if you think of the battle in Tolkien, the battle with Sauron is not an economic battle.
There's no bad force, just bad midichlorians. Oh, if only that were true. It's all fucked now. Let's just think about the OT only, please. Thank you. I don't even like the OT. I just don't care anymore.
It's not a territorial. It's not like, we deserve to live here, and so we're going to take this over, and then we're going to have a peace treaty. No, it's a battle of annihilation. It is a religious war, in the sense that all or nothing. We will win and totally destroy you, right? And so this, fall from grace Pantheon cosmology very much has this aspect of all or nothing. One side wins, one side loses. So as I mentioned, the creating of the origin story for your world, in terms of the cosmic origin story of all the different planes of existence and the gods, can seem very daunting, and depending on how much you want to work it out. But don't forget, what are people going to know on the ground? What is the story they're going to tell And this can be fairly simple. They're not necessarily going to all have a blueprint for how all the different planes of existence were created. This is for the gods to worry about. So when you create your origin story, just think of one the average person would know. Doesn't have to be complicated. If you have someone that is a cleric and they get up to 20th level, they're going to know a little bit more about the true relationship of the gods, how they began. And this might be information that is not only very useful, but held in secret or something, or it contains some clue to some cosmic struggle. So I hope that's helpful. If you want to create a pantheon, and I've done it, if you want
to... I've just thought that now I'm going to have to make like 5 separate... Not 5. So many separate things of like, this is how this god is viewed by this culture, and this is how this god is viewed by this culture. God, why am I making so much work for myself? At some point, I might just say, fuck it. Oh, no. No, I probably will do it. It's one of those things where every character creation is going to be different, right? This is something that's going to be so much more detailed than it needs to be, probably. But also, like, it's not going to be for everyone, and that is fine with me. I just gotta figure it out.
I create an origin story for your world. I've done it. It's really fun, but you don't have to. And I don't think your world, your homebrewed world, is not real without your own pantheon. It's just as real to the players. They're going to have fun playing in your world because you're going to create encounters and situations. You're going to create NPCs with desires and motivations. You're going to remember that they are the antagonist and protagonist of the world. That's what's going to be fun. So again, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe. I'm always looking for more subscribers. Please leave comments. I love to hear what you're looking for, what you're thinking about. And in the meantime, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.
I like that channel. D&D Homebrew is a good channel. Go subscribe to them if you haven't yet. Good channel. Maps and spreadsheets are your friend. That's true. I do like me a spreadsheet. Cool. I like that channel. This is a good channel. Awesome. So that was the first video. I have a couple more lined up. We might just get through one more. We'll see how it goes based on that one. But I think this is as good a point as any to do that whole thing that I do usually in the midpoint, which is the shouting out and the shilling. So it'll take about like 10 minutes or so go get a drink or something. But if you don't care, either way, so I wanted to say thank you, of course, to our lovely patrons, a couple of which who have been here. Oh my god, that's crazy. So we'll start off here by saying, hey, do you have Patreon? Well, if you don't, you could, and also you could support us through it. That's crazy. TableTalk, DND, patreon.com/TableTalkDND. You can help support us and all of that, and it's pretty cool. But anyway, that is all to say thank you to all of our patrons right now. That is starting from the top in tier and alphabetical order. That is Draco Kraken at tier 4. Thank you so much. And then Mug Zero at tier 4. Thank you as well. Rick, aka Unit Rico, at tier 4. Thank you. Slazer at tier 4. Thank you as well. Steely at tier 4. Thank you so much. Haven't heard from Steely for a while, when I think about it. Oh, I wonder how he's doing. Drake Cross at tier 3. Thank you as well. Our good old Arcane Tyrant Lux at tier 2. Thank you. Chris at tier 2. Thank you as well. Frozen Spaghetti at tier 2. Thank you. And Kill Chrono at tier 2. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the support over these past few years, really, from most of you. So thanks, yeah. Obviously, if you want as well, you can get our logo on something on TeePublic. Link is in the description. It's a good logo. Percentage of it goes towards the artist. And finally, you can go over to Humble Bundle. If you're thinking about getting a Pathfinder bundle, I'm sorry, not Pathfinder, Starfinder, other Finder, Starfinder bundle, you can use the link in the description to get it, and you support us and Tabletop Alliance, a charity that uses tabletop games and such to help out with communities and other things. You can go find their website in the description as well to learn more about them. And yeah, a percentage of it, however much you want, will go to the charities / us. And this one also gets a Starfinder Armory physical copy, as well as a bunch of PDFs. And the link itself will also allow it so that you can buy anything throughout the Humble site. And it helps support us and our charity of choice, Tabletop Alliance. So go there, go get some stuff. Humble's great. I love it. And it is partially the reason why I have way too many games in my Steam library. I'm up to like 1,300 now. So, plus there's like a bunch of cool like comic bundles and such. And yeah, it's a great little site. Great little site. Love it. Anyway, we'll move on now over to the next video of our selection here. That is how to create interesting gods and pantheons by building better dungeons. Now, it's an interesting word, that interesting. Interesting hasn't lost meaning yet. I wonder what that means in this case, because I suppose a boring quote-unquote god would be one that just exists and isn't really a force or anything, really. It has no history or anything. Has no connection to the world, which is surprising to me, if that is a thing that can even be done with a god of a pantheon in this in your game. But yeah, this is building better dungeons. So it's only a 7.5-minute video, so we'll see what is here for us. And hopefully I'll learn a thing or two, or maybe not. Here we go. That's quiet.
When you're a world builder, you might want to make a pantheon of gods to populate your worlds. It's no easy thing, however. I have seen a lot.
I apologize that his voice is only in your right ear, because it's only in mine.
People create things that are pretty uninspired, and my own first attempt at making a cast of gods for the people in my world to worship was comically bad. With many of our players playing clerics, paladins, divine soul sorcerers, blessed one warlocks, and the like, and many of our NPCs having a place in their heart for the divine, a boring or flat pantheon can create a stumbling block or a dull note in a vital part of our characters' lives, and I think we can do better. This is Building Better Dungeons, and today we're talking gods.
Cool. Good intro.
So where do we go wrong with pantheons? It's easy to try and slice the pantheon in a cosmological way. Have a god of life, a god of death, a god of war, a god of knowledge. After all, that is how religion is presented to us in Dungeons & Dragons via the Dungeon Master's Guide.
True.
As a variety of domains, each with their own god or two. And that system is functional, but the gods are pretty removed from the culture that supposedly worships them. Think for a moment. Why would anyone worship a god of death?
Oh, don't. Oh, come on. Think for a second. Why wouldn't you? It's not because they just represent that, or maybe it is because they just represent that. What do you mean? Having, you know, good old Nubis? Technically more than just death, it was also judgment. Maybe that's where he's going. To be fair, that maybe that's where he's going. But even if it is just a god of death, you might worship them in order so that your death itself is peaceful, right? Or you're wishing death upon another, or it could be a number of reasons that have to do with death. You're wishing for another person to have a quick death, or a bloody noble death, like Klingon, right? I want to die in battle, so I say, which would be the Klingon god of, what the fuck? Oh, what was his name? Oh, it was a TNG episode? Fuck. Where they had the Klingon god come, quote unquote, he was like cloned or something. Anyway. Good episode. I love how every D&D video uses Magic the Gathering art. Well, yeah, I gotta use Wizards of the Coast stuff for a Wizards of the Coast thing. Of course. But yeah, it's,
And your gods will want worshippers as a way of exerting their will on the material plane, but if your god of death is just a powerful death-related dude, what's in it for those who praise him? Do they just want the power? If it's just the power, why not worship a god of nature or light and get that power from a more agreeable and cheery source?
But that's okay, you must have a point here, because that's crazy. What do you mean?
I think the impulse to divide up the universe along domains like this leads us to poorly thought out gods and worshippers that don't make sense.
Warriors, medics, grave tenders, anyone who wants a more peaceful death or wants to stave off death would worship death. Yeah, exactly. That's my whole point. Anybody that has anything to do with it, in one way or another, is probably going to go, hey, hey, I'm going to give you at least an offering, right? Remember, there's like, you know how, to be fair, I at least envision, and I think this is a thing that happened, potentially in real life, that multiple gods were given offerings because you wanted multiple of them to be looking at you in order to get, a blessing or something, in some cases, right? So like you'd give, the god of, let's be as basic as possible. The god of war, you gave an offering if you're going to war, because you're like, hey, I'm doing the thing. Please make it so that I do really well in this war or something, right? Or in this battle or whatever. So you give him his payment. You give your god of knowledge their payment so that you can be as knowledgeable in that thing, in that war as possible so you don't die, okay? And if all else fails, you give the god of death the payment because you're like, hey man, if I do die though, put me somewhere that's pretty good or something, right? If there's no like afterlife technically, that is a one-way ticket, like a Valhalla, right? You die in battle, you go to Valhalla or something. Well, even then, I don't know if there's technically there could be an alternative, but even so, you go, hey man, let me go. I gotta give Charon my payment so that I can go across the river, right? Like, it's not. It doesn't like it. It just It's more of a failing on your part, I guess, person who has made the video, to not understand why these things could be worshipped, I guess, like what possibilities there are here for just one aspect. It can cover so much, even though it is just one aspect.
When we do this, I think we look at the situation from the wrong end. We should focus on the worshippers, not the worshipped. Why would someone worship a god of death? Perhaps they consider the god a psychopomp, a farrier of souls from one reality to the next. In my campaign, this is the major function of a Threnin, the god of death. People worship him because it comforts them to know that their deceased loved ones are in good hands. And
okay, so that's fine if that's what they do, but is that his purpose? Is that what he does? Did you make him that way after the fact? Or is that why he existed? Noah worshipped the death gods, then the no death god would have power. That's also true, absolutely. But like, this is the thing. You're assuming that we're putting the cart before the horse, but I could easily say that you are putting the cart before the horse in your own aspect, right? Both ways are fine. There's no right way to do this, but for you personally, this works better when you're creating your Pantheon, then it would, like, for potentially someone else who wants to go God to then worshiper, right? Because we've already given examples of many different types of people who might worship a death god. And, like, I legitimately have, for mine, I have a god of undeath who could be worshipped by not just undead, but could be any walk of life who is in a bad spot or wants to promote that sense of community or wants to just have be a kind person and knows that kind of aspect of Tenebrum, or they want to be undead, or they're both undead and all of those things above, or any of that kind of thing. Like, I created the god first, and then I have the ability to have anybody who really either knows him or has some sort of perception of him worship him. Like, that's... worship is just worship at that point. Like, unless he comes to you and goes, hey man, I'm not about that, which he kind of can't too often now. That's kind of his thing. That's why there's so much misinformation about him, because he can't really set things straight to most people. So, I don't know, man. I'm glad this works for you. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad this works for you, and it's not a bad way to do it. I'm just saying, you seem to be in a mindset where you don't think it works the other way around, when it absolutely already has.
Because if they don't, when the time comes, a threaten might force them to walk the long path, full of hardship, instead of a simpler route to their afterlife. It was this function that a threaten sprouted from, and I filled in from there. The people of my campaign world, Oga, came to view a threaten as a god of passage in general. He's a god of changing states, of opening doors, of journeys. Okay. Some cultures extend his purview to money. Coins, after all, go on many voyages, and are always changing hands. It's this worship and culture-focused pantheon building that helps keep gods not just interesting, but relevant to the characters, and therefore relevant to your players.
So how can you even say that it's backwards to do it the other way around, then? Like, again, I literally, before this in the other video, said how I would have other cultures look at these gods differently, and they could worship them for entirely different reasons. But the core of the god is however the core of the god is, Like, it doesn't matter what they do in a culture sense, unless they are right there all the time doing these kinds of things, where, like, the Saturnico, my god of harvest and health, will always probably at least be the god of harvest for everyone. Okay? But the god of harvest could also be someone who is against the harvest of others. It could be that the Saturnico does not favor your harvest. Could, in fact, instead of, if you don't worship him, I'm writing this down now, it could be that he's viewed as kind of vengeful if you don't worship him and don't give him his tribute, then he will curse your next harvest. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's just stemming from the fact that he's a god of harvest. And I came up with that before thinking about the worshipper. Like, the harvest aspect. Am I misunderstanding here somehow? I don't... perceived by some to curse the next harvest if not given tribute. And hell, he might even act that way. I don't know. Wait, a god of passage into death that is also responsible for coin? Completely brand new, no relations, cough, Hades, cough. Don't worry, nothing is original. This is the other thing. Like, you can make whatever you want, that's fine. Just know that everyone will find something that is not original about it. I'm sure that anything that I say is not original that I make. I don't care. I've already said that I went from Tenebris, which is the Latin word for dark or something. And I think it was Latin, and that's how I got to Tenebrum. And he was originally going to be a death god, and then he became an undeath god, and all that kind of shit, right? Like it is anyway.
Your players might do a double take when the shopkeeper praises the god of death after making a good sale, but it's this multiplicity of aspects that keeps gods memorable and interesting, and makes for memorable and interesting conversations with their followers.
Sure, that's fair. I'm completely with you there. Doesn't mean that you can't start that way. Like I said, Tenebrum was undeath, and then after that, before that he was death, and with the same thing of the downtrodden, the kindness, the compassion. In fact, actually, no. I unfortunately, before that, not unfortunately, but I guess unwittingly, that's the one, made him more Anubis-like before when I had him as death and judgment. And then he was also downtrodden and all that kind of stuff, community and kindness. But then I was like, no. I think we'll change him around. If he's going to become undead, he's not going to have the judgment thing. He's literally just there to help people still. Even though he's viewed as this bad thing, he'll still hold to his principles and still want to be that way and not judge people for the way they are, but just help them in their times of need. Which, it's anyway, I'm sorry. It's just weird to me that we can't work from the other way around, apparently, in this man's mind. I don't know if that's even true. I would doubt that that's even true. It's just... Anyway.
Let's have a look at what passes for a god of justice in my campaign,
okay.
Vitarum. Vitarum was originally worshipped as a war deity, and because the people often liked to view their wars as just, Vitarum took on an element of purging wickedness and ensuring righteousness. Vitarum became a deity for anyone trying
I just love his having a long explanation about how he worked from the follower up and how grand that is to only then create the most well-known death god. To be fair. Like I will claim ignorance, at least. I didn't know Hades was about coin, to be fair. But yeah, if you did, then you would instantly pick that up. It doesn't, whatever. Anyway, let me bring that back a little bit. I do want to hear about this.
Vitarum became a deity for anyone trying to strike out and put evil in its place. Soldiers pray before important battles, and common folk put in a prayer to Vitarum before facing off their local bullies. However, not all wars are just, and so the creation of a second god of strife was necessary to justify why these people would sometimes lose their battles. Mocher, god of slaughter and underhanded tactics, the god of victory at any cost. Sometimes, when the culture came to view a previous war as foolish or ill-conceived, they began to believe that their rulers were influenced by Mocher in disguise. They conceived Vitarum and Mocher as brothers, not always easy to tell apart in the heat of battle. Bandits and criminals sometimes pray to...
They look pretty easy to tell apart. One of them's a centaur man, and the other one seems to be a big monster, but fair enough. I assume this is just, more Magic the Gathering art? It doesn't matter, it's fine. I would assume it's an interpretation after the fact once you recognize them and all that kind of stuff. I'm just being an asshole, I'm sorry. I'll bring it back.
Of battle. Bandits and criminals sometimes pray to Mocher before they do violence, and he often answers their prayers. But Vitarum and Mocher aren't good and evil. Sometimes people in Oga must resort to underhanded tactics to defend themselves from evil, and sometimes evil forces believe with a burning righteousness that their cause is the correct one.
Sure.
Some view Mocher as the more honest of the two brothers. Vitarum dresses war up as a fine game, where the best and most honorable win the day.
Why are we looking at Drizzt? Why is this? That's all Theros art? Okay, there you go. Yeah. What is this? Anyway.
And Mocher knows the bloody truth of it. Most soldiers will pray to either when it suits them, and most also have a preference. In my world, whether a soldier wears the symbol of Mocher or a symbol of Vitarum can tell you a lot about them, as can whether they wear neither symbol but have both in their back pocket.
Sure.
This kind of process is a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, like, so, yeah, I mean, and again, it's not a bad way to do it. It's absolutely a fair way to do it. You're figuring out how the people view these things. You're doing the cultural explanation of how these gods came to be, instead of the creation aspect of how these gods came to be. Even though you already did the creation kind of thing. But regardless, like, it's fine. It's fine. It's just you gotta understand that when you said that it seems to be backwards the other way, it's to you it seems backwards, because to me it seems exactly the same, just another approach. That's all.
When you get the hang of it, and helps keep divinity and gods relevant in your world. Crufir is my exploring god, a god of horizons and discovery. They began as a genderless god of the sea that the seafaring peoples would pray to for safe passage. But as these seafaring peoples began to move inland, their need for Crufir changed. Crufir became a god of finding new things, a god that gave luck to explorers and protected pioneers from danger, who delighted in giving their followers new insights and perspectives. As those people built up cities and libraries, Crufir gained an aspect of being a knowledge deity. Many view research as an exploration of a sort, and prayers to Crufir have given these people luck and protection they need to scour great swathes of information and come upon the exact discovery they're looking for.
I do agree with you that he has yet to say why we would start from the follower and not the god. Yeah, I mean, so this is the thing. Again, either way. Either fucking way. This is true, like, these gods are more interesting because they evolve, I guess, based on the needs of their followers. That's cool. Neat. Seems like that's just how they work, and that's totally fine. Or that's how they always were, and they just didn't. It just is now understood better. This is my question: is did nobody talk to them? Like, did you not have any people to go? Sorry, any clerics to go? Hey, man, what's up? Right? What are you all about? What do you want me to do anything? Why? You know, the classic thing of questions from their followers. So none of this was clear before to them? I don't know.
It might seem like a lot of work on the DM's part, but the trick is it's more efficient than it might first appear. When you work gods into cultures like this, they naturally acquire a variety of aspects that mean they can work for multiple different clerical domains. Crufir could be worshipped by a storm cleric in their original aspect as a sea god, or by a nature cleric in their capacity as an exploration deity, or a knowledge cleric who seeks Crufir's guide in discovering new learning. In this way, just 3 to 5 deities woven into a culture can give every cleric in your world a god to lean on, and it can be a lot of fun for your clerics or paladins to find other worshippers of their god who lean into very different aspects.
Sure.
It helps the gods feel real, mysterious, expansive, and powerful when they have multiple domains like this, and it helps keep your pantheon down to a reasonable number that you can actually remember. It's also just a ton of good, clean fun. Of course, most worlds will have more than one culture. You could make a pantheon for each individually, but that is a lot of work. You could make them all work off the same pantheon, but that makes these different cultures feel suspiciously similar. The balance I've found is having a relatively large overall pantheon, about 15 gods in my case, but you could certainly get away with fewer, and have each culture worship 4 or 5 of them. For example, Kernan, my god of lightning. To the Anvil of Livna, my society of tunnel-dwelling dwarves and goblins, Kernan is a god of invention and new ideas, of being creative for a purpose. But to the Red Feathers, the consortium empire of tieflings and Kenku, Kernan is a god of good ideas and communication, a god of marketing, whose symbol often appears on advertisements more than flags. To the Roots of Gerna, the dragonborn elvish alliance, there is no Kernan. They don't know him spiritually at all. In this way, not only do cultures inform the gods, but the gods inform the cultures. My clerics...
Wait, so they don't know about him in the slightest? So they don't recognize him? That's it? So, like...
of Kernan can...
Sorry, so, like, So then, what do they think about the people who follow him? Do they hate them? Do they like them? Do they just not give a shit? Like, culturally, wouldn't they have an influence somehow? If they exist.
See clear as day the different interpretation of their deity by these different cultures, and it helps them understand these people's...
I guess then it's literally just, hey, fucking, they just don't give a shit, and that's fine. Like, fair enough, but there was nothing about it that they cared to, like, my idea here is, if we're going culturally, then wouldn't they be appropriated and called something else, right? That's what happened with a lot of gods, I think, I'm pretty sure, in our history, that some gods were taken from other pantheons and just changed into a different name and represented basically the same kind of thing, or somewhat different, could be. But so they literally they just don't at all, even though he has an influence and is definitely giving power to people, so they don't recognize him at all. That's the problem here with thinking about it, I guess, in this way, without even thinking about the fact that they are real. They exist. They have an influence on the world. Like, you can go with cultural stuff, but you gotta remember that everything is going to be affected because it exists. And everyone knows that it exists. Like, you can't deny when a cleric of this god that has no, I guess, place in this culture, when the cleric of this god gets the power to do anything because of that god, because they know clerics exist, how do they what do they do? Crufir, God of the Horizons, as he literally shows a picture of Crufrix, the God of Horizons from Theros MTG. Well, you know. Did he say 50 or 15? Either way, that's a lot of gods to start. I recommend 9. He said 15, I believe. And that's the thing. Sure, it's a lot. Like, I'm at 6, but I feel like I need a few more just to make it well-rounded. To make sure that I can cover all of the planes. Or sorry, not the planes. The the domains. That's the word. I was thinking knowledge domain. That's why I said knowledge. But so I think you can do whatever you want. It's just you have to expect the work that comes with it, right?
In a more visceral, personal way. It's Pantheon building and world building all in one, and as a tool, I really, really recommend it. And that's that. Thanks to our lovely patrons for making these videos happen, and thank you for watching. Good luck with your gods, and safe home.
Cool. I have no reason to do it one way or the other because of your video. Your video has shown me a way that I could do it, but again, it is just another way to do it, you know? He would use Chara Dramur in their profile pic and the name of a god of blood in their screen name. Don't worry about it. I don't know. But anyway, I'm fine with this being a perspective of a way to do it. I think the most important thing is having your gods be more interesting is how they're perceived and how they're used and what they represent. That's why I don't want to have just one thing for each of my gods. Not to say that's not interesting. You can make it interesting just depending on the people that follow it. But having it be a more widespread thing of many different people will follow them for different reasons. Like, with my potential of my God of Earth and Judgment also being, like, the patron of humanity. So most humans would potentially follow them just because that is, like, they were one of the driving things to help humanity most of all. You know, it makes it so that culturally you'll see a lot more humans as that, but you won't necessarily not see, you know, a fucking Dragonborn also worshipping them. Because they believe in judgment, right? But and again, I started from the god. I didn't go to the follower first. I don't know, man. I'm backwards. Anyway. That one didn't last very long at all. So, I guess we'll move on to my final video. Which is from Icarus Games. We've covered a few of Icarus Games videos. This one is how to create gods and religions for D&D and RPG campaigns. World Building 101, Episode 1. So this will be an interesting little bit here. So hopefully, we get a little bit more information. that will be hopefully a little less I don't want to say accusatory, because that's not what it felt like for that video. It seemed a lot more narrow-minded, in a way. It's not like, I assume, and I'm going to say, that the person who made the video before, the Building Better Dungeons channel, whoever it is that runs that, if I were to throw this out and go, hey man, I think that it's totally fine to work the other way around and it's not backwards at all, and explain my reasoning, because I can come to the same exact thing from there and not necessarily going from the people to the god, that the person would go, oh yeah, no, that's totally fine, right? And probably also say, I didn't mean for it to sound the other way. I didn't mean for it to sound like I believed it was backwards for you to do the other thing. I just, all that kind of stuff. Data analyzed. Exactly. All right. So, again, this is Icarus Games. We've covered a couple of their videos. I forget what your name is, friend. But let's see about this video on gods and religions. This one's 15 minutes and 47 seconds. Here we go.
Greetings gamers, today I'm going to be showing you how I make deities and pantheons for my homebrew campaign.
Sure.
There are a whole bunch of different official and third-party pantheons available, so why exactly would you even want to make your own? Well, one reason could be that you love the process of creation and you just want to create an in-depth world for your players. Another reason could be you can't find a pantheon that fits your specific style and tone. And the third reason could be that you want the players to feel like this is a real world. And by creating an entire pantheon that they don't know, it helps them feel like this is a real place. So, how do you go about creating a pantheon? Well, that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to dive straight into it with a nice blank page.
Oh my god.
The first thing I like to do when I'm creating a deity is think about the primary region in which they are worshipped. So I think today we're going to go for a god who is worshipped mostly in Ashk. Now Ashk is a country in my homebrew setting. It is an Egyptian allegory, so plenty of deserts, and it draws heavily on ancient Egypt and the sort of Middle East, North African region of the world in its influences.
So we've already come across another way, regional gods, a way to start from a specific region. Now, could you argue that this is the worshippers as well? I guess. He's got an idea of how this place works and what the culture is like. So potentially, I guess so. So yeah, either way, it's just another way to do it, and it's good. I like this idea where you've got regions that you've set up, because technically I also had regions that I had set up, but I didn't really. They're not gonna be the same as what I had before for my world. I'm gonna do a whole fucking rewrite of a bunch of things for that, I think, because it's way too Eberron. Way too close. So I gotta do some changes, but regardless, it's just I'm a lot more willing to go from this because he hasn't told me that I'm backwards.
So the very first thing I do after deciding where I want this deity to primarily be worshipped, if it's a specific region, is think about their alignment and their domains. So I think that this deity should be a lawful good deity, and that their domain should be order, protection, and war.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if I had my absolutely legitimate copy of my Dungeons and Dragons thing, this is another way to do it. The way that I have done this so far is just thought about what they represent, not necessarily the domains, but what they do, instead of going strictly from that and then going to what they do with that kind of power, I guess. Sorry. instead of starting from a domain and going into what they do with that kind of power, I like the idea of trying to figure out who the god is beforehand, and why they came about the way they did and what they would do to get there, and then I think assigning the domains after the fact is better for me. Hell, I might not even be able to assign some of them the right domains, quote unquote, right? I may have to create one or two. We'll see. I don't know, because I don't know them all off the top of my head. But let me find the domains in 5e at least. That would be in, I guess, the player's handbook would be a good place to find this. And then I'll go down to the index, and then I'll look for domain. That would be, see, death domain. That's not what I want. I just want regular domain. Domain. D-O-O. Domain spells, see under divine domain. There we are. Thank you, index. Divine domain. Where are you? There you are. Page 58 in the player's handbook. Very good. Very good. Ah, of course it's under the cleric stuff. Oh, these are only those domains that are in the player's handbook, though. Okay. Let me pull up a list, then, off of the internet. You know, that place that has all of the information that I could ever find instead of looking somewhere else. I wanted to give the book a chance. Divine Domain List 5e. I don't care about them ranked. I don't care about the subclasses. I want the divine domains. That'll work. Oh man. Oh, this doesn't help me either. Fucking Forgotten Realms wiki. That has everything from 3.5 up. I just want 5e ones. Here we are. Hey! Here we go. Okay. Knowledge, Life, Light, Nature, Tempest, Trickery, War, Death, Arcana, Forge, Grave, Order, City, Protect. City? Oh, that's a UA. Okay, I see. So I don't pay attention to those. Solidarity, Strength, Ambition, and Zeal from Planeshift Amonkhet. There might be more. But okay. So I probably only go with the stuff that goes up to Xanathars. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 of them. That's only through Xanathars so far. Okay. I guess I'll see about more later on, but oh, Order is in Ravnica. There you go. That might also be something that could be useful. We'll see. But okay, cool. So 12-ish maybe.
Now this is important to list out what domains they come under, because you can get two lawful good deities that would approach things very differently if one had order, protection, and war, and the other had love, nature, and knowledge, for example. They might both be lawful good, but they would approach problems very differently.
Right.
So once you know what domains your god is going to cover, you can start to get a picture of their personality and the type of deity that they're going to be. So the next thing I'd want to do after deciding on the alignment and the domains is name the deity. Now there are a couple of different ways that you can do this. The way that I like to start with is by using Google Translate. If the deity I'm building is worshipped in a particular place, I'll look at the real world allegory for that. So in our example, this deity is worshipped in Ashk, and that is an allegory for Egypt, the Middle East, North Africa, that sort of region of the world. So I'm going to translate some keywords into Arabic and see what we come up with.
This is fair. This is what I did with Tenebrum and Tenebris, the word, Latin. I like using Latin. I like using Nordic and Dutch and Swedish. Those are fun. to kind of pull from and mix and match. And I primarily do Latin just because it's, I don't know, I like the use of a dead language to kind of make stuff that's similar but not necessarily one-to-one the same, right? It's just, I don't know. But I highly recommend, if you want to make names for anything and you don't want to use a generator like fantasynamegenerator.com, that you should go to and use, because it's a great site, and we are not sponsored by them, but we should always shout them out because they're great. Using this way and combining or looking for different words is good.
So we'll start with protection, as that's one of the primary domains. You can see you get the Arabic, the sort of English translation of it, and you also have the option to listen to it. Himayatin. Now, Himayatin is nice, but it's not quite what I want. So we'll try a different word. Let's try defend. And that gives us Aldeafe. Aldeafe. I like that. I think that's what we're going to go with. Aldeafe. And we will paste that in. Just capitalize that.
Sure.
And because I've translated that from the word defend, I think that this god should be called Aldeafe the Defender. I like to give my deities titles as well as names in a similar way to, if you've seen the show Game of Thrones or read the Ice and Fire books, you know that all the gods have a title. There's the mother, the maiden, the smith, the warrior.
Yeah, that's another thing that I haven't done yet, but I was thinking of it, giving every god a variety of titles, some that are known to those who know the true nature of them, or some that are just very vaguely familiar, or some that hate them, all of that kind of stuff, just to add some more flavor, which is going to be another whole thing that I have to keep track of in my brain, which is bad for me, but it adds to the idea of the world and the influence that these gods have on it, I think, at least. Where you just go, this guy is known as the defiler on this for these people because they fucking hate him. It's using Tenebrum again. He's a fucking god of undeath. Why the hell would anybody like that? And then somebody who actually knows about his actions and who he was would call him the kind, or the gentle. Actually, probably better. But because gentle could be misinterpreted, right? Like a gentle death or something like, I don't know. But I like the idea of having titles that could also become misinterpreted and change that way. Just so much complexity in my brain that I hate myself for, but it's gonna be cool, I hope.
Gives you a way for NPCs and your player characters to refer to the deities in a sort of colloquial manner. So they might say, the defender protect me, as opposed to Aldeafe protect me. And it just adds a little more depth to your world. So the next thing that we'd want to work on are the sort of virtues of the deity.
Okay.
And what it is that they believe and how they approach different situations. Now, going back to the domains again, because I find that the place where I'm going to get most of my information from is going to come from those domains. And I know that Aldeafe is a goddess of order, protection, and war. I've chosen a goddess instead of a god because this end part, this fae, makes me think of a goddess. So we just change that there. The goddess who is worshipped mostly in Ashk. And we know that the domains are order, protection, and war. So Aldeafe might believe that military might, martial might, is the best way to defend. So believes that martial might is the key to defending the innocent. And because she is a goddess of order, but also of war, then perhaps worshippers of Aldeafe might believe that to resolve legal matters, trial by combat is the best way. So strong believers in trial by combat. When two people enter an arena, the one that walks out is just and true. So that tells us a lot about how a culture built around this goddess would work.
I don't have much to comment on here, so I'm just gonna ask questions, I guess, because I can't add too much to like this process because this is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. Would you say then that somebody who surrenders in that, would it be just to kill them still, or is this a defend? Like, is it a defend to your life for your conviction, or is it the one? Can two people leave? Basically, is my question. Can two people leave and one be declared just and the other put in jail or something? Or is it a trial by combat that you fucking die? I don't know. Headphones are a little too quiet for this guy. Yeah, he's kind of mumbling, but I think that's because he's using like an onboard laptop mic for this video, which I don't know when this video was made, so I apologize. I tried upping it a bit more, but when he gets loud, he fucking gets real loud, so I don't want to blow out people's ears. But so far, it's literally just been what he's talking about here, which is, making this goddess, which, again, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just kind of watching the process, seeing if there's anything else that I can comment on.
How their legal system might be structured. At the same time, I think that there would be a strong disdain for cowardice.
Okay.
Either refusing to pick up your weapon, or turning your back on a battle, on an honorable battle,
This is I guess the other thing that I can comment on is that it's a good idea to ask yourself, how would a god take every situation, just to find exactly how they would instruct their followers to as well, and if that interpretation can be, and I mean true followers, I guess, because again, you could have a cult of a different aspect of that god that does it in a different way, that isn't necessarily the main faith or something. Can just make him out at least. Okay. Well, I have him up to 130%, so hopefully that helps. But anyway, so I think the most important part in any kind of situation where you're creating stuff is just ask yourself questions. However outlandish, if it's too outlandish, then you'll probably not find an answer at all, so that question probably won't be great to need an answer to, so you probably won't need it at all. But most of the time, just ask yourself how these things will play out, and then somebody will go, or you'll go, this is how. Just based off of what this character, or sorry, this god itself has as their domain or their virtue or whatever it is that you want there. However they've handled situations in the past, I don't know. There's not much else that I can say about this so far.
And that honourable battle segment is key here, because I don't think worshippers of Eldeafe would be too concerned about taking part in a battle that wasn't honourable if it served no purpose, if it wasn't protecting someone, or if there was no lawful cause for the battle. I don't think they'd have any interest in it. But if someone refuses to pick up a weapon to defend their town from attackers, or if they refuse a just duel, I think that worshippers of Eldeafe would probably look down on someone that did that. And then they might have a particular dislike of assassins, because to assassinate someone is to do it without any honour at all. The next thing that we want to think about is what the holy weapon of the god is going to be, because in a fair number of systems, the deity you choose to worship will confer some sort of proficiency for their godly weapon.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. I wonder, because I know, like, holy weapons, so, like, you can have, what is it, is it called holy weapon? What the fuck is the 5e spell called? Spiritual weapon, that's the word. Spiritual weapon in 5e is the manifestation, in, the description at least. Spiritual weapon exists to become a weapon that is literally the gods' true, like, what they use. And, you know, you can flavor it however you want, and you can either follow that or not, but if you want to remain true to that one, you do need to have some sort of weapon that does go with your god. So now, you know what? That's what I can do while I'm doing this, is make notes on my gods. Mostly Tenebrum, because fuck the other ones. For now. Weapon. Huh. Well, as an undead, I'm sorry, an unwilling, I guess, god of undeath, who's mostly about his helping people and the downtrodden and all of that, he can't have anything that is seen as something of status. So I'm thinking that his weapon that he is associated with would be a staff. Something that is incredibly easy to get, costs literally nothing if you go out in the woods, so like a quarterstaff or something of the like. Some sort of staff. Quarterstaff. Because that will also give you a little bit more of their personality in the weapon itself. Now, this is something that I will have to think about of if people of different interpretations of the god use spiritual weapon, does it manifest more as what they interpret the god to have? Which is an interesting proposal. At that point, are they even really a cleric of that god? Because a cleric is a chosen usually, paladins as well. So I'm wondering if a cleric of Tenebrum could even have his power if it wasn't a true follower. That's an interesting thought. I'm going to write that down now as well, because I think, at least in my mind, a true follower of Tenebrum would not actually be able to do, like, if they claim to be a follower of Tenebrum, however you want to say it. If they claim to be a follower of Tenebrum and were a cleric and used spiritual weapon and it wasn't a quarterstaff, then they wouldn't be a true follower of them. It could be a different god in disguise, my evil dickhead god over here, Vinerot in disguise. That's a good idea. Oh boy, I'm gonna write this down. Quarterstaff, only seen by true clerics of Tenebrum. Hey, I'm getting some world building ideas, because unless you're knowledgeable, and most people aren't, unless you're knowledgeable of actual, like, the actual tenements of Tenebrum, haha, that's an alliteration. Unless you're actually knowledgeable about his true nature and who he is and all of that, then probably people associate his weapon as something else. That's interesting. In 3.5, clerics also get proficiency with their god's favored weapon. That is true. Yeah.
So, holy weapon. Because this is a deity primarily worshipped in Ashk, an Egyptian allegory, I think that a Khopesh,
I knew it,
would be a good holy weapon. You know, the curved swords, and because they are cool, a goddess of protection, defending. Let's do it with Khopesh and shield. and we can work out mechanically whether it's all shields or some shields later on. But we know it's going to be a Khopesh and a shield to defend the innocent through the strength of their arm. Next, what I like to do is I like to give my deities some saints or heralds. I think that having saints associated to your deities makes it much more interesting, because when your party go to a new place, they might not necessarily find a church of Ildeafe, they might find a church dedicated to a saint of that faith. And it just adds that little extra depth to the world.
Okay, yeah. That's not a bad idea either. Allows you to have more NPCs, or at least history that is not necessarily thrown in the face, right? You get to elaborate more on why these people were thought of as embodying that deity, right? Because they followed them to such a degree, and then they did things to further their goals and such. So it's an interesting thought, and I feel like I would do this for some cultures, but not for every, right? I feel like, at least for my world, you'd have some people like the ones that have the saint. The saints would be the ones that cared to do that, slash their primary faith is probably the ones that would get these. So like unfortunately I don't think Tenebrum is ever going to have a saint or someone that is seen as, well, a true saint, I guess. I feel like saint is pretty Catholic. For other religions, you could change that to champion or hero or something. Yeah, exactly. Like, quote unquote saint, but it gets the thing across, right? It's more of a like the esteemed cleric of, right? The paladin, like the highest paladin of, or whatever. However you wanna give it. Champion and hero also work. But you give them the title. So for Tenebrum, probably they'll be forgotten. The people that really embodied him, they'll just be seen as really good people that happened before. Yeah, and then probably, since most people see him slash the higher, or the most of the body of people, the undead people that technically worship him, will see him as something different too. I think they will probably have, it's not, I mean, they're false heroes, quote unquote, false saints, if you will, but they're people that they have brought up to say that these are the people of Tenebrum. Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I have to think about that a lot more, because I wanna give these people that are known in history as they're his followers, but didn't actually do anything like he did, you know, but they're venerated as such. It's interesting.
So to name your saints, you can do a few different things. You can follow the same process that I did for finding the name for the deity, using Google Translate, translating some keywords and seeing what you like. But another thing that I like to do is look at the real world region that the area these saints might have lived in came from, and then look up some traditional names. So in my case, I have looked up some traditional Arabic names, and I've decided that I really like Kamal.
Sure.
And because of the type of deity they are, Ildeafe is, I know that they're big on defense, so I think that they would canonize someone that gave their life in defense of someone else, that martyred themselves for someone else. So the saint is going to be Kamal the Martyr. And he might have died during a siege, defending the people. And that's all I need to know right now. I can expand on that. So we know the name of our deity, we know where they are worshipped in great number, we know their alignment, their domains, their virtues, we know their holy weapon, we know the names of one of their saints. Next, I want to think about the way in which they're worshipped. I think it would be interesting if, instead of having traditional churches for Aldeafe, if instead the places of worship for this goddess were more like gyms or fighting pits, more militaristic locations where people come and their prayer might be dueling and combat and the strengthening of their arms.
Yeah, another way to really show to your players what that god is about is to do something like this where you give their holy sites whatever purpose it is that they have. Like, churches are very traditional for Catholicism, but it's just a place of worship for them. Churches exist for every religion, I guess, in one way or another, but having it be that the church is I guess I'll use Tenebrum again. So any place that would actually be a place of a venerated, or not venerated, a quote unquote holy place for him would be anywhere that is about the helping of the community. So a soup kitchen, I guess, wouldn't really like necessarily exist in the world, but something to that effect, right, would be technically a place of his. Though I think with the way that things are for that society, and forgetting about Tenebrum's true intentions, probably going to be some feeding pits or something to do with keeping them alive in undeath, because that's all they remember him as, just the god of undeath, the one who shepherded them, the one who kept them alive. So, yeah, something like, not like cattle pits, but you know what I mean, like with their victims, their food, wherever they're kept, or wherever they're eaten, something. Maybe like caves or something, because that's... Ooh, caves would be good, because that's where they would be sheltered into. He would get them to, in order to keep out of the sun. Yeah, you know what? Caves. Okay. That's caverns and caves are his holy sites, according to the current society, I guess is the way to put it. Poorhouses and soup kitchen-esque, because I don't know if that's a thing that existed before. Soup kitchen esque places are the true. And I might change that a bit just to make it work a little bit better. Places. Okay. This is helping. I like this.
Knowing that the temple of Aldeafe is quite a martial place, I think that there would be a strong monk presence there. Aldeafe temples have a lot of monks.
Oh!
And I'm thinking...
I'm sorry, I just realized that I've unwittingly made a thing that was canon for my vampires and undead society quote unquote undead in general society, that caverns and caves thing being his holy site makes so much sense for what they do with their venerated elders. Because I didn't mention this, but I'm sorry, I have to talk about it. So when the undead of this society get too old, because they can live for fucking ever, as long as they don't go in the sun or whatever, or get stabbed, or all that, since they can subsist forever, they eventually do go mad. They lose their sense of self, or their sapience, or whatever, and they start to become more bestial. This is after a long time, hundreds of years. And usually they seal their elders away. They're venerated to the point of they're not allowed to die, or basically. They seal them away, and this being put into like caverns and caves like that, so that they can no longer feast on, because they could potentially feast on the ones that are still alive and sapient. So they don't kill them, because that's just not, they can't do that. That's not their way. It's in fact a grave sin to kill another an elder, and leads to complete exile and communication and all that from the society, so that like they can't have free quote unquote food, and they have to go out and actually get it from the people outside of their society, and it's a lot harder that way because they're fucking hunted and they're on their own. They're not talked to or anything by anyone of the undead society. So I've unintentionally made it so that putting them into their like forever sealed away caves and stuff is actually a holy act with two Tenebrum. Nice. That's I love it when things line up. That's fantastic, actually. I'm so happy about that. Okay.
More about Aldeafe as a goddess and the religion around her, I think that because of the strong martial focus, there would probably be an above average number of paladins who worship Aldeafe, and a lower number of clerics, because clerics are more about passive defense and healing, and Aldeafe is more of an active defender, take the fight to the enemy to defend your people kind of goddess. So this is a really strong foundation to build on. It's maybe 15, 20 minutes worth of work to get to here, but we already know quite a bit about this deity. Yeah. We know their name, their region, we know things about their religion that could inform how we characterize NPCs in the world. And if you were creating an entire pantheon, this is the most work I would put in at the start for each deity. I'd definitely create their names, their alignments, and their domains, present that in a list to my players if any of them wanted to play divine characters, so that they could look through the list and decide, yep, this is what I want. I want to play Paladin of Aldeafe. At that point, I could use this information that I've written here and expand on it. And that's what I'm going to do now, and then I can show you what I would then hand to the players.
So, I take a little issue with this because the character might not... So, at least for me and my thoughts on alignment and stuff, the alignment doesn't necessarily matter. The domains might matter, but I think the intention of the god matters way more. So I think I would need description of that god. Like, I would need to know what they stand for more so than just the domains, right? Because domains mean very little in specifics. It just means that these are things that they are known for. Whereas with the virtues thing, like he's got here, then that is what I would need. Because he didn't say... Did he say that he would show the virtues too? I don't think he did. I think that's absolutely necessary in order for you to really choose, especially if you have multiple gods with multiple of the same domain.
And here we have the result of another maybe 15 or 20 minutes work. All told, I've put far less than an hour into this altogether. And you can see that we have quite a lot of information now about Aldeafe the Defender. You can see that I've put her titles, Aldeafe the Defender, the Goddess of Protection, and made a note that her faith is practiced all over the world, but more so in Ashk than anywhere else. I've noted that servants of Aldeafe believe that martial might is the superior form of defense. And then you can see on the right here, I've grabbed a picture of a Kopesh, which is her holy weapon. And then underneath, I've listed her titles, alignment, her holy weapon, and her domains. And then in the body of this text, I've expanded on their beliefs, on what people who worship Aldeafe believe, and how they conduct their life. I've also expanded on the entry for Saint Kamal the Martyr, and I've written a small description of how he was defending a besieged city from a foreign host, and in an effort to let the people escape via the sewers, he led a team of volunteers to the gate and held the gate against the oncoming host long enough for the civilians to escape. It cost him his life, and then upon his death, it said that Aldeafe herself appeared on the battlefield and lifted him up to the after, which is my version of heaven. And there he sits at her right side as her chief saint.
Sorry, is that martyrdom? I don't think that's martyrdom, though. I might be mistaken. Let me look at the word. Martyr. Is it just dying for a cause? Is that just what it is? Person who's killed because of their religious or other beliefs. Okay. I guess it technically fits.
So for under an hour's work, we've got a really strong deity. We know a lot about them. We know a lot about the attitudes of their followers, and we know how their followers might react to different situations. If you were to give this to a player who is playing a divine character, they would have a really strong sense of the kind of god that they are worshipping, and it'd go a long way to helping them believe in how the world you've built is a real place. This is the process that I use to build my entire custom Pantheon, which has got, I think it's 22 deities in it now, and I followed basically this process for each of them to expand on the background of them. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you've created your own Pantheon or your own gods, I'd really like to hear about them in the comments below and see if you've got any extra tips for people to help them build their own Pantheons. But until next time, happy gaming. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, don't forget to...
That got a lot louder. Let me cut down. I'll let him do his outro. There we go.
Hit that subscribe button down below for new content every single Friday. And if you want to keep watching, well, there's another couple videos for you to watch just over there. Happy gaming.
Cool. Yeah, I mean it's a good way to do it. It's another absolutely fine way to create gods. Couple of things that I didn't even think about, which I now have to think about for every single one of them. But like you said, like that didn't take very long. That was about 12-15 minutes of work to kind of type that all out, just for the very basics, and then to kind of flesh it out a little bit more if that's what you want. Obviously, you can do as much or as little of that with like the saint kind of aspect, quote unquote, or your venerated, not venerated, I use that word a lot, I'm sorry, that anointed, that's the word, your anointed kind of special heroes or champions or saint, whatever word you want to use for them, because you don't necessarily need to have them. You could have it just be the person themselves. Or, sorry, the god themselves. But yeah, I think that was pretty good. I think that was a pretty good selection there. To show a bunch of different ways to create pantheons and gods in general for your games. And I've learned a few things, and I hope you have as well. So, let's move on to comments for the very last part of this stream today. This podcast today. I don't call it a podcast enough anymore. So, let me get over here, and then here. Alright. So we only have a couple, unless if I refresh right now and we have more. We will see. Nope. Good. So, why is this here? Get the fuck out of here. There we go. What? So, we have from Con of 7 on last week's episode that was running mysteries in TTRPGs. There's a Pathfinder actual play podcast that I enjoy listening to who had begun to explore other systems that came across Delta Green and the like. When they talked about the differences between the pre-written adventures / scenarios / operations, they noted that in Delta Green, the writer will present only what has happened and or what will happen if the PCs fail to do nothing. From there, it's entirely up to the players to drive the investigation. Yeah. I made it just in time for the end of the stream. Well, hey, how's it going? Speak of the devil, if you will, pardon the expression. Yeah, just reading your thing. And yeah, I think that it's the best way to do it. Because for most of everything, to be fair, I think the PCs being the driving force of how your games go is so much easier to work with than you trying to prepare for these things to happen in however long it will. Because your players are going to get there, or they're not going to get there that session, or they're going to get there in 2 sessions or 4, or, however many. And you just need to kind of be able to be okay with that and prepare for it to the sense of, like, it's there for them when they get there, right? Or you can make it up as you go along. Either way, like, however you're going to do it, the players are going to get there when they do. It's just a matter of time for them, So yeah. And then Lux on last week's episode. Here we go. So, let me actually get a drink of water, sorry. I'm thirsty. Okay. So, my thoughts on mysteries. Not something I have experience running, but I can speak theoretically. I can't really remember everything that was said at this point, so if I repeat something, that's just going to have to be what happens. Oh, don't worry, I don't remember anything ever. One thing I would expect to be true is that you're going to need the right players to run a mystery for. They need to be interested in solving that type of puzzle, and they need to have the right kind of wiring in their thinky brains to put the clues together. You can gauge interest beforehand just by asking, but ability is a little trickier. You might be able to tell from how they've played in other campaigns, but it could just come down to trying your mystery out on them and seeing what happens. The worst case scenario is probably that they don't pick up on anything and you end up either having to hold their hands through it or just watch the party crash and burn in failure. I think that I would personally try to help the players to a certain extent, but there would be some point where I would let failure happen because I don't want the party's success to be predetermined from the outset. Yeah, I mean, so this is just the thing of, like, you have to kind of play it by ear a lot of the time, but as long as you in session 0 are like, hey, what do we want to do? Oh, you want to do a mystery kind of game? Okay, let's do a mystery kind of game. So there are going to be clues, we're going to have to, you might want to take your time a lot more. You might want to think a lot more about this kind of stuff, make it all clear and then kind of go from there. It should be fine for the most part, but I agree with you that at some point if they just keep fucking bungling to the point of like, yeah, dude, you have no fucking idea, right? Then at some point you're gonna have it so that they fail, I would say. I know it's one of those cardinal sins, but having your players fail, what? No, it's literally just one of those things that you don't hear people say, because failing is bad. But yeah, you might fail as a character in the story. Just means that we'll have to figure out what happens because of that. That's all. In practical terms, if you want to give the players some help, you can probably let them roll an appropriate check to see if their character can make a connection or otherwise think up a useful thought that their player couldn't think of. That way, there's still a chance of failure, and at least the character earns the success if they achieve it. In a similar way to Sherlock Holmes noticing evidence and making connections that Arthur Conan Doyle himself couldn't have actually made. Of course, you'll need to make sure you don't give away the entire solution to the game when you provide a clue this way. That might be easier said than done, but try to be careful about it. Yeah, the easiest way is just be vague about it. You point them in the direction, you don't, you nudge them in the direction, you don't point at it, right? You go, something about this is making you think of there's something about it that the bookstores, they must have a copy of this kind of thing in order for you to figure out what's going on here better. Something like, and then they can go, okay, I want to look through the bookstore, right? What are you looking for? Well, and then you have them think about what they need to look for more so. And hopefully they get it from there. Who knows? Other points you could stand to consider here are, what are the character's actual motives for trying to solve the murder, and what kind of legal system does your setting have? Character motives would be defined by the players, but in general, they would either be seeking justice or profit. If they seek justice, they will need to go all out and find all the evidence to identify the true culprit. If profit is all they're after, all they need to do is build a convincing enough case against someone to convince the legal system of that person's guilt, then collect the reward and be on their way. It's not their problem if they just sent an innocent person to the gallows. It's not like they'll get haunted or anything. For the legal system, the big point you need to consider is whether the setting uses presumption of guilt or presumption of innocence. Presumption of guilt is the Phoenix Wright system, where the attorney for the accused, if they get one, is required to disprove the theory that the defendant is guilty. Presumption of innocence is the opposite system, where the prosecutor must disprove the defendant's innocence. Presumption of guilt makes it easier for an accused person to be convicted, whereas presumption of innocence makes it less likely for a falsely accused person to be convicted. There are 3 standards of proof that a legal system might use. Preponderance of evidence is the lowest standard, as it only requires there to be more evidence for a theory than against it. Beyond a reasonable doubt is a higher standard used by the American legal system for criminal cases requiring whoever has the burden of proof to establish that their theory can withstand any objection that the court considers reasonable. Beyond any doubt would be the highest possible standard, under which it would be extremely unlikely for whoever has the burden of proof to win their case. The last standard would most likely be employed along with presumption of guilt by an oppressive government, which would probably create a legal system rife with corruption and bribery. Woohoo! If the party is driven by a profit motive, stacking the legal system against the accused would place them at an advantage, while favoring the accused makes the party's job harder. A justice-seeking party would not be helped by having the accused at a disadvantage, and could even be hindered if something is wrongly accused before the party discovers the true culprit. Phoenix Wright puts players into a disadvantaged position inherently, as Phoenix's involvement with every case begins when he is hired to defend someone who has already been accused. Yep. And also he doesn't know anything about the case until like 2 or 3 parts in. Good times. There's a fantastic animation channel for, just off topic for a second, fantastic animation channel that did a bunch of Phoenix Wright animations that I recommended to Boo, and I will recommend to the rest of you. It is... let me get there. It is... Oh, I put it in this. Yeah, there we go. Mornall on YouTube. If you are looking for it, it's called Preparing for Trial, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Animation, Paula something. It's cut off on my screen here. But it's a fantastic, well, I love these animations. They're so good. I hope more come out soon because they're all so fucking great. They really show you some good sides of Phoenix Wright that are really funny. So yeah, anyway. Moving past legal systems, the important point to remember about solving a mystery is that it should be a process of eliminating theories until only one possibility remains. If players latch onto the one theory and make it their mission to prove themselves right, they won't uncover the truth. They might be right because of sheer dumb luck, but it's more likely that they'll accuse the wrong person. Still, if you want a game that allows players to carry out the real process of solving a mystery, you need to lay it out with that in mind. Any given piece of evidence should point to possibilities, not directly to the answer. Only by finding all or enough of the evidence should the field of possibilities be narrowed down to one. That's it. Oh my god, there's so much more. Holy fuck. I didn't expect this. Oh my god. Okay. That said, you as the GM can't really make the party do anything. They'll either take the right approach or they won't. However, as a GM, you are a game designer. And as a game designer, you have the ability to train your players, and they don't have to know what you're doing. Basically, try to come up with some ways to make it apparent when they're getting off track, without actually just telling them that they're getting off track. At some point, if they're chasing a wrong theory, it's going to have to become apparent that they are wrong. And if they make an accusation without the evidence to back it up, whoever they report to can just straight up tell them they can't build a case on that. On that note, the consequences of acting on a false theory should be proportional to what exactly the characters do. If they just go up to the police chief and say they think someone did it, but don't have enough to prove it, the chief can just tell them to go back out there and come back when they have more. If they do that too many times, he can start getting irate with them, but if they actually haul someone in and can't prove that person committed the crime, they could receive a more serious punishment as a consequence. And if they actually take it upon themselves to kill someone without legal justification, they have just committed murder. Of course, I'm assuming this is a classic whodunit type of mystery, where the villain is just trying to get away with the crime they already committed. If this is more of a James Bond or Batman style of adventure where the party is trying to stop an evil mastermind from carrying out a greater plan, they're going to necessarily focus more on uncovering the plot and chasing the bad guy down. It's important not to confuse the two types of stories when talking about them. The action/adventure story is more like a standard campaign where the heroes would be more justified going in with blades swinging, while the classic mystery is more of a contest of intellect, where the villain really should not make things easy on the characters by obliging them with an epic final showdown. If the challenge is meant to be in proving that the villain is guilty, you would throw that challenge away by having them attack the party. You could have the villain attack if they know they're absolutely cornered, but only if that's the last possible means of survival left to them. Yeah, and this also helps with, like, framing the mysteries in systems. Like, I could see both of these in a D&D kind of setting, but I would see the whodunit a lot more in, like, Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green, rather than the action-adventure kind of thing. Whereas, well, I guess I can see the action-adventure kind of thing in Delta Green more so, but with Call of Cthulhu, you can see it, but it's very, very bad to go in guns blazing, so. All those things that have a lot more of a deadly kind of combat system, those ones are probably going to I mean, they can do both, but you want it to be more of a whodunit for your characters. I guess how to play the villain is an important point to think about here too. So the irony is, the more the villain tries to interfere with the party's investigation, the easier that villain will be to catch. The smartest thing a villain could do is play it cool and just go about their life. However, even a smart villain is going to get nervous and be tempted to try to outsmart the people trying to investigate their crime, or try to stop them by some other means, in the sense of bribery or something like that, or just a threat in general. Take Moriarty. He just kind of goes in and goes, "Hey, man. Hey, Holmes. You've been really annoying. Well, first you were a little bit of annoyance, and I was like, whatever. And then you kind of got in the way, and I was like, okay. And then you halted something, and I was like, this can't stand. Now I have to do something about you. So here I am to tell you, you're fucked. You're fucked, my friend." And then, great scene. Good stuff. I love the fact that he literally goes like, "No, you were an annoyance for a while. Like, and then you got a little bit more annoying, and then you did something that actually made me have to come after you." Oh man, such a good man. Good writing. Anyway, it really tells you about Moriarty as a character. Fuck. Anyway, so where was I? So the key here is to strike a balance. Let the villain get spooked and do something subtly suspicious every now and then. If the party starts getting way off track, maybe let the villain blunder and create some evidence that hopefully leads them back in the right direction. But be careful, because if the villain just immediately gives themselves away, that could ruin the game. The party would still need to find enough evidence to prove the villain's guilt, according to whatever standard they are trying to meet, but that gets a lot easier to do once they know who it is. You might be able to salvage the situation from there, maybe by having the villain start trying to desperately frame someone else, or go on the run and lead the party on a dangerous chase, or maybe take someone hostage and create a tense situation where the party has to rescue that person. I suppose you could trigger that scenario intentionally if you want to try to get a more dramatic ending, but be ready to think on your feet at that point and don't do it too early. I'm sure a lot more could be said about this, and there's more than one way to go about it, but those are the thoughts I've been able to come up with for now. As far as actually putting those thoughts into action, though, I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon. You never know, though. I might make a liar of myself, but probably not, because my mind knows only carnage and destruction. All these big-brain thinky thoughts make me sleepy, so good night. Good night, Lux. Yeah, mysteries are hard. You can talk to Boo about it even more, where he's been writing his campaign for fucking years now, just to make sure that everything works and is in place. And he's right that it needs to kind of be almost perfect so that you don't have, plot holes or things that make it so that it doesn't make any sense, because you could completely lead someone down the wrong path. Unintentionally, because you just didn't think about it, and you didn't give it enough time. Well-crafted shit is hard to do. But anyway, that's that. That's all the comments. There's only a couple, but they, big comments. Big comments. Thank you. So, that'll do it for us for today. It is just me. This time, so hey, think about if you're new, subscribing, I guess, liking the VOD when it comes out, and or liking this. I don't care, either one, or don't like anything. I don't care what you do. Okay, you can do whatever you want to do. Leave a comment if you want. Think about more things, questions, all that kind of stuff. Fucking comment them, or leave it in our Discord, join our Discord. I know some people have left the Discord, and that's fair enough. We don't do much in it, but I'm hoping to change that, at least this Thursday. If you're a patron, we're gonna be doing board games if Boo is up for it. If not, then I might just have Brogan on for a little co-op stream thing. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you know when we get closer to the point. And if not, well, we'll see how it all goes. But for now, I guess get the fuck out of here. I don't know. Go away. It sounds like I need to become a patron. You don't have to. You don't have to. Remember, it's just a thing for, you know. It's just one of those additional things that we need to start doing more for patrons, because all the people that give us money every fucking month, they're fucking insane. Thank you again, by the way. Oh, that's the thing before I say goodbye. Hey, oh, this is wrong. Thank you again to Draco Kraken, Mog Zero, Rick, aka Unit Rico, Slazer, Steely, Drake Cross, Lux, Chris, Frozen Spaghetti, and Kill Chrono. All of you have been supporting for a while, and I appreciate that. We all do. The dice are coming in July, so when it becomes the worst time of the year, the summer. It's so hot. I hate it. Anyway, thanks again for stopping by, for watching, for continuing to support. Tell your friend to subscribe. Do it. I thought the stream ended. What do you mean? It's gonna end in a second here. Get out of here. Go. Leave. It's time now for the stream to end. Go on. Go on home. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Bye.